So officially calling this meeting to order. This is the Board of Directors, the Sandag Board of Directors meeting on Friday, April 9, 2021. And the first thing we'll do is the Pledge of Allegiance. So I invite you to join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so before our non-agenda public comments, and if you have any, just please raise your hand for that. I would like to take a moment to recognize the passing of Senator Jim Mills. So Jim Mills was a San Diego native, and he served in the California legislature for 22 years. He was and is an icon for public transportation in our region, and his 1975 legislation created the MTS trolley, which became a model for other light rail systems around the country. So he said, and his words still hold true, he said, "I thought that if the people of San Diego could see it, they would like it and want more. It's expanded since, as I knew it would." So Senator Mills was not afraid to do big things, as we know we are trying to do here at Sandag. And I would also like to say, so recognition of his passing. And so the next thing I'd like to highlight today is that we posted the applications for public members of the audit committee last week. So the application period closes the very end of this month. So there's about 3 weeks left on May 1. So please contact our clerk, Francesca, if you have any questions about the audit committee. And lastly, I want to thank our stakeholders and partners for engagement. We have received several comments in advance of today's meeting, and then many of which of these will be discussed during our items today. There is one thing that's not on the agenda, and that is a letter from Circulate San Diego that requests that Sandag take action on Vision Zero. I understand that we will be hearing from our staff at a future meeting on how Vision Zero, which is Vision Zero for anyone who doesn't know, is the idea that we should aim for and then achieve no traffic deaths to pedestrians and bicyclists. So Vision Zero is aspirational, but is a really, really important planning goal for us. So it is being considered in the development of the regional plan as a top priority. So it's really the core of our mobility goals, safety for all users of the transportation system. And it will be an important part of our discussion when we're talking about the regional plan. So now we will go to our non-agenda public comments. Do we have any, Francesca?
Thank you, Chair. If we could let the interpreter just take a moment to do his message before we get started.
Oh, of course. Okay, go ahead. And also, if you have your audio on, if you could mute it, because there's a little bit of a feedback loop when it's going through multiple different channels.
Thank you and good morning. As was indicated, we will have simultaneous interpretation for the meeting today. In the event that there are comments in Spanish, if you would like to use the interpretation feature to listen in English, please scroll to the Zoom control bars where you have your microphone and your camera. There you will find an interpretation icon. It looks like a world. Then you would select English as your language. If you are joining through the Zoom mobile app on a cell phone or a tablet, you would press the ellipsis first, the 3 dots, then interpretation, and then your language. This message, will now repeat in Spanish. Buenos días, se va a ofrecer servicio de interpretación simultánea. Para hacer uso del servicio, por favor, desplácese a la barra de controles de Zoom, donde aparece su icono para cámara y para micrófono. Ahí encontrará un icono que dice interpretación o interpretation, parece un globo terráqueo, y seleccionaría español como su idioma. O Spanish. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom, primero presione los puntos suspensivos, luego interpretation y luego el idioma. Gracias. Thank you. That concludes the message.
Thank you, Carlos. There are a few members of the public with their hands up. Just a friendly reminder that this comment period is for non-agenda items. So if you're looking to comment on a specific item, if you could lower your hand and then raise it again during the item presentation, and I'll call on you at that time. So first, I see Jesse O'Sullivan. If you have a non-agenda as public comment, you can go ahead.
Hi, my name is Jesse O'Sullivan. I'm Policy Counsel at Circulate San Diego. First, I want to give a big thank you to Chair Blakespear for everything that you said about Vision Zero. I'm very excited that that is a priority. In general, I'm commenting to ask the board to bring Vision Zero to Sandag by setting a goal of eliminating street traffic fatalities and serious injuries. Traffic deaths are a serious problem in San Diego County, especially for bicyclists and pedestrians. Nationally, 2018 had more pedestrian deaths than any year since 1997. This is also an equity issue. People of color, people over 50, people with disabilities, and people walking in communities with lower median household incomes are disproportionately killed while walking. These deaths are preventable. People have a perception that there's nothing we can do about traffic deaths and that it's inevitable, and they're not. When streets are designed for safety, deaths and serious injuries do not occur. So as a metropolitan planning organization, Sandag is uniquely positioned to regionally reduce traffic deaths. No single jurisdiction can eliminate traffic fatalities and severe injuries alone. As outlined in our letter, what we're asking is that Sandag set a goal of 0 street traffic fatalities and serious injuries by a specific date. Sandag should provide funding for local governments to create their own Vision Zero plans, and Sandag should condition discretionary grants on local governments adopting Vision Zero. This is the same model that Sandag already uses for climate action plans and complete streets requirements. So again, thank you to Chair Blakespear for asking staff to consider this, and we look forward to hearing what you do with this.
Thank you, Jesse. Next will be Lori Saldana, followed by Nicole Burgess.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair and board members. My name is Lori Saldana. I was the Assembly representative for the City of San Diego for 6 years and got to know Senator Mills during that time. And I want to thank Mayor Blakespear for acknowledging his contributions to our region. One of the things I learned through Senator Mills is the habit of memorializing people around San Diego County on bridges, overpasses, highway markers. And one of the things I've realized is how those memorials do not reflect the diversity of our region. And increasingly we see names going up of people who have contributed to our region, but very few are people of color and very few are women. And so I wanted to take the time today to, with the passing of Senator Mills, who did so much to contribute to our regional transportation infrastructure, both the trolley system and in other ways, I wanted to ask members of this board who represent cities and communities throughout the county to consider, as we look at historic investments in infrastructure in the coming years, to consider memorials that reflect the diversity of their communities. Equity in memorials is just as important as equity in real life and when people are alive. And paying tribute to someone who has passed is important, and making sure that the diversity of our region is reflected in those memorials is also important. It's often said you can't be what you don't see, and we don't see a lot of really important leaders who have served San Diego well and are no longer with us, and we don't see them memorialized in our county the way that they represented us when they were alive. And you know, a case in point is that the only women I'm aware of who are memorialized on our freeways are women who died under tragic circumstances, and as opposed to women who were leaders, who accomplished great things, researchers like Sally Ride at Scripps and others who would make wonderful, you know, they would be very worthy of being memorialized in various ways. So I realize this isn't an agenda item currently, but it may come up in the future. And I just wanted to encourage the board members to think of how to be more equitable and reflect the diversity of our region when they consider memorializing people who have made important contributions to our county in future deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Nicole Burgess, who will be followed by Noah.
Good morning, Sandag Board, and thank you, Chair Blakespear, for the time recognizing Vision Zero, and excited to hear that this is going to be a future agenda item to be discussed by the board. I want to start first by thanking Gustavo from Caltrans. Last month, he provided some remarks about the new vision for Caltrans, and that safety is prioritized in their new vision. And that is extremely valuable and great to hear from my perspectives and from all of our perspectives. And thanks Circulate San Diego and Vision Zero Coalition for bringing this to Sandag. I applaud the city of San Diego, Chula Vista, Imperial Beach, and La Mesa for having a Vision Zero policy and adopting a Vision Zero policy, which deals with the systematic approaches, safety approaches for creating safer streets in our region. And I encourage those cities to really push Sandag to adopt a Vision Zero policy on their own. As mentioned, Vision Zero is to reduce traffic fatalities by creating safer street design. In the US alone, we lose over 100 lives a day to traffic fatalities. And over thousands of lives are affected with serious injuries, extreme losses, debt, and just awful circumstances with the way our streets are designed and how we move in our streets. If you can take a moment, if you are unfamiliar with Vision Zero, I highly recommend a great little YouTube by Peter Firth, a Northwestern professor, mentioning mobility is a human basic right. No one should have to risk their life to get to school, to work, or their local shop. And this little short YouTube video will give you a great idea of what is possible and how we can create safer streets for all of us to get to our places and our destination. And just lastly, just as Sandag has as one of their goals is to create a fast transportation system. To me, this is counterintuitive to a safe mobility. So I fear that when we have faster drivers and faster ways to move, we're really like just not really considering all modes of transportation. So maybe perhaps we can change that to efficient and safe. Thank you so much, board, for your time this morning, and I appreciate the moment.
Thank you, Nicole. Next, we have Noah, followed by Mike Bullock.
Good morning, Chair Blakespeare and board members. This is Noah Harris, policy advocate with Climate Action Campaign, speaking in solidarity with the organizations today calling on Sandag to adopt Vision Zero. Redesigning our streets so they're safer is not only necessary to eliminating traffic deaths, but key to incentivizing mode shift towards more sustainable modes of travel like biking, walking, and transit. Historically underinvested communities of concern in our region have some of the least access to safe, connected, and protected pedestrian infrastructure and are disproportionately exposed to traffic violence. We urge the board to use Vision Zero principles to secure a transportation system that is more equitable, climate safe, and climate ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Noah. Next is Mike Bullock, who will be followed by Karina Gonzalez, and Karina will be our last public commenter.
Good morning, Honorable Chair and board members. I'm Mike Bullock. I live up in Oceanside. It's been a while since I've addressed this body, but I do stay up with your work, and I support the 5 big moves. But what needs to be incorporated there are pricing strategies. And but I don't want to talk about that right now. I want to talk about the bigger picture and our climate change situation and what it means for the environmental impact report that's going to be prepared for your regional transportation plan. The fundamental question is, does the regional transportation plan support stabilizing the climate at a livable level, or does it contribute to destabilization? And this is, I guess you could call it the mother of all environmental impacts, because destabilization is as scary as it sounds and worse. It does mean that we will end most life forms on the planet. There'll be a devastating collapse of our human population and so on and so forth. So The question is, in any legal environmental impact report, that the question that is answered is, yes, the regional transportation plan conforms to a plan, a specific engineering plan. I'm not talking about the Green New Deal. I'm talking about what we actually need. And I say that as a systems engineer. We need a plan that shows a set of enforceable measures that if they were all legislated and enacted, these enforceable measures would cause cars and light duty trucks, light duty vehicles, to achieve climate stabilizing targets. The problem that you have, and it's not all your fault, is that there is no plan. We currently have no plan showing a set of enforceable measures that would ensure that cars and light duty vehicles as a category would achieve our first occurring climate stabilizing target, and that's in 2030. And you know, we all talk, we understand state mandates, climate mandates, state mandates, that's wonderful. But we also have to look at the science base. What are the climate scientists telling us? And they tell us the first target that we must meet is in 2030. That's why it's an emergency. We don't have very much time. And so you don't have a plan. So and now here's some interesting news. I have written a plan. It's peer reviewed by the Air and Waste Management Association. That's a good starting point. So I see I'm running out of time, but thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Mike. And our last public speaker is Karina Gonzalez. Karina, you can go ahead when you're ready.
Good morning, Chair and board members. My name is Karina Gonzalez. I'm the Climate Justice Policy Advisor with Hammond Climate Solutions. I'm calling today to strongly urge the board to adopt a Vision Zero policy. As Jesse mentioned, people of color, elderly, and disabled people in communities of concern are disproportionately killed while walking and biking, and SANDAG is in a position to reduce these deaths and set goals for zero deaths, just like many other metropolitan planning organizations are doing now. So thank you for reviewing our coalition letter, and I'm excited to see what is adopted. Thank you.
Thank you, Karina. Chair, that concludes the public comments.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll go to board member comments. But I also just want to encourage everybody to be brief with their comments because we are on a tight schedule today. So we'll start with Council Member Paloma Aguirre.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. This is Councilmember Aguirre representing MTS. I just wanted to share a few comments relating to our new Pronto system and MTS's recommendation relating to the fare ordinance being considered today. Our new online system Pronto will be a great advantage for thousands of our riders, particularly for our riders who are transit dependent. The system will be pay as you go, which means that riders won't have to make a full payment at the beginning of the month. Instead, they will never have to pay more than a full pass in a day or a monthly pass in a month. So no matter how many trips they make, riders will always get the best fare. I'm very proud that we're also recommending a fare reduction for youth one-way fares from $2.50 to $1.25. So that's a 50% reduction. My hope is that we continue to explore ways to boost ridership. And I believe that offering reduced rates for our youth is one of many ways to do that. Additionally, we're reinstating a free transfer window of 2 hours for most of our services. And I believe this change will be very positive, especially for our low-income riders, such as those from the community I represent. So I just wanted to share that I'm fully supportive of the changes in the fare ordinance and look forward to the full implementation of Pronto. So thank you, Madam Chair. That concludes my comment.
Okay, thank you very much. Mayor Jones.
Thank you, Chair Blakespear. Okay, so I have two things. One is we talked this morning at the executive committee, actually our executive director did, that we have a lot of dollars coming forward that will be used for bike lanes. So I'd like to have SANDAG staff look into and talk to stakeholders when we're discussing class 3 bike lanes and class 4 bike lanes, because I've been hearing from a lot of cyclists lately that class 4 bike lanes are not particularly something that they want to see. So I'd just like for us to do a little bit of a deeper dive into that. And then the most problematic issue that I really would like to discuss here today is I actually asked at the executive committee, which chair you were there, so you're aware of it, what the process was to put something on the agenda for the board of directors. And so in the interim, I actually looked up on our policies, and board policy 1, number 3.1.1 says clearly that any item that a board member wants to put on the agenda must be requested in writing to the chairperson prior to the executive committee considering such an agenda. So in our agenda today, that was approved on March 12th. I'm part of the executive committee, so I was there that day. We did not have item number 8 on that agenda. And so I'm very concerned that we are not following our own policies. And so Chair Blakespear, I call on you for us to follow our policies. And I think this is a clear violation. Item number 8 being voted on today when it was never seen by the executive committee and never added or approved onto our agenda. Thank you for your consideration.
Yes, we will have the attorney address that when we get to item 8. I want to go through the board member comments now and then consent and then move forward so that we are talking about all the items at the same, that item all at the same time. So Mayor Dedina.
Thanks everyone and good morning. So Imperial Beach, if you think you have problems and you were glad we're emerging from the pandemic, you didn't know that you didn't have 40 million gallons of raw sewage and toxic waste be discharged over the last 24 hours into the ocean off of Imperial Beach. Our beach was closed 9 months last year. It's looking at 100% closure this year. Closures went as far as north as Coronado. But the big picture is that we can't get back to normal in San Diego, and we can't fix our sewage problem unless the infrastructure for making decisions on the border, and that includes SANDAG, the San Diego Chamber of Commerce, the City of San Diego, Imperial Beach, the County of San Diego, the state, are all engaged in border policy making. So I would request that the SANDAG leadership and staff continue, but to really jumpstart a program to work with our partners, the UC San Diego, the State Department, the state of California, the San Diego Chamber of Commerce, et cetera, on jumpstarting how we're going to reopen the border and get decision-making and policy-making back on the border. We have a migrant kid crisis, but we have a toxic waste crisis. My residents were literally gagging in their homes and getting sick from the stench of toxic waste and sewage in their homes this week. It's completely out of control. And without a robust apparatus at the federal government, it once again requires San Diego leadership and San Diego Tijuana leadership to jumpstart that program, as we have always done. And we're missing the absence of that. It has to be in person. We're going to be opening soon. It has to be engaged. And it really is bottoms up like it always is. So I would request that SANDAG start working with its partners to start thinking about how we're going to reopen the border and pressure the federal government and the state government to get that going sooner than later, because we can't get back to normal. And my residents can't stop being sick from sewage as well as the residents from South San Diego and San Isidro until we get the border working again. So with that, thank you very much. But again, I wouldn't be asking that if I didn't know that SANDAG had been a historical leader on border infrastructure and border decision-making. So that leadership role and diplomacy role is more important than ever. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. So just to let everyone know what the run of show is today. So the main item on our agenda, which has received the most attention, is item number 8, the resolution. So we are, I'm unable to move that forward in the agenda because the panelists who we've invited here today have time constraints, so they're not able to wait for us to do that first. So we will move to that resolution no later than 11:15, regardless of where we are in terms of comments or questions or that kind of thing. So right now what we're going to do is go to consent, and then if there are any items pulled from consent, they'll go at the end of the meeting. And then after that, we will go to our professional staff, and then we will go to the panel discussion that we have on our agenda. So in front of you, you have consent items number 4 through 7, and I would entertain a motion on that.
So Sotelo Solis move to approve consent items 4 through 7.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Let's go ahead and vote.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. For the City of Carlsbad, Mayor Hall.
Yes.
For the City of Chula Vista, Mayor Salas.
Gonzalez, yes.
For the city of Coronado, Councilmember Donovan.
Coronado, yes.
For the county of San Diego, Supervisor Lawson Reamer.
Yes.
For the city of Del Mar, Mayor Gasterland.
Del Mar, yes.
For the city of El Cajon, Mayor Wells.
Yes.
For the city of Encinitas, Chair Blakespear.
Yes.
For the city of Escondido, Councilmember Martinez.
Yes.
For the city of Imperial Beach, Mayor Dedina.
Dina, yes.
For the city of La Mesa, Councilmember Shu.
Yes.
For the city of Lemon Grove, Mayor Vasquez.
Mayor Vasquez, yes.
For the city of National City, Second Vice Chair Sotelo Solis.
Sotelo Solis, aye.
For the city of Oceanside, Councilmember Rodriguez.
Rodriguez, yes.
For the city of Poway, Mayor Voss.
Aye.
For the city of San Diego, Vice Chair Gloria.
Aye.
For the city of San Marcos, Mayor Jones.
Jones, aye.
For the city of Santee, Mayor Minto.
Minto, aye.
For the city of Solana Beach, Mayor Huebner.
Huebner, yes.
For the city of Vista, Mayor Ritter.
Ritter, yes.
Thank you very much, and that does pass unanimously.
Okay, great, thank you. So now we are on to our panel discussion. First, we'll hear from staff. This is the 2021 Regional Plan Role of Technology. This is item number 3 on our agenda.
Good morning, Chair Blakespear, Vice Chair Gloria, and Second Vice Chair Sotelo Solis, and members of the board. Today, you will hear from some of the most well-respected technology experts in the field of transportation. We are fortunate to have members from our Vision Advisory Panel to provide their insight into what innovators like Ford, Qualcomm, and other pioneering companies are doing to create the transportation infrastructure of the future. I'm very proud of the regional team, the experts they have consulted with. Today, you're going to meet 2 of our internal stars, Antoinette Meyer and Sanjeev Nanda, who lead the future mobility and the technology part of the plan. These stars are nationally recognized as one of the best. And today, in addition to the panel, you're going to have a great benefit, like I did, of listening of how we are reimagining the future of transportation system in San Diego. Now it is my honor to turn it to our amazing planning director, Colleen Clemenson, and chief economist and chief analytic officer, Ray Major, who will start the presentation.
Thank you, Hassan. We're getting closer to the release of our draft 2021 regional plan, which will set forth the reimagined future for the San Diego region. In August, we outlined the vision for the 2021 regional plan, explaining how we use data and the 5 big moves to develop a transformative transportation system that will address congestion, social equity, and meet our state and federal mandates to protect the environment. And then the team did the tough work of entering all the details into our transportation model and conducting the analysis necessary to turn the vision into the regional plan. In February, we explained that work. We shared the key planning assumptions, initial performance results, and we were pleased to report that we will meet the state's aggressive greenhouse gas reduction target and vastly increase the number of people who have access to fast and frequent transit. We also shared what improvements and programs could be expected by the year 2035. That's the halfway point in the plan. Last month, we took a deep dive into all the data, a lot of the things that many of you have been asking for, to share the assumptions that were used to develop the plan. We shared a lot of information with you and with the public. We also explained the cost estimates and the investments for the 2021 regional plan in comparison to the 2015 regional plan. We laid out a funding strategy, and you'll recall that a funding strategy is a federally required part of the plan to show what could bring the plan and the vision in the plan to reality. Today, we're talking about the technology, the big game changer in the transportation world. We want to demystify these technologies These technologies are often referred to as disruptors, and we want to discuss how they are already operational today. So here's the plan. Here's our agenda. Our chief economist, Ray Major, will spend a few minutes explaining the significant technological trends that have brought us to this moment and how the technology of today is expected to shape innovations of tomorrow. Antoinette Meyer will explain the 3 technology trends that could radically change how the region's transportation system is used in the future. Then we have an outstanding independent panel of transportation technology experts. And that panel will be facilitated by our Sandag entrepreneur in residence, Sanjeev Nanda. We will wrap up with Antoinette explaining how technology is being incorporated throughout the regional plan and integrated within the 5 big moves. This presentation is about disruptive technologies and how they change the transportation landscape. These technologies influence the 5 big moves and the vision for the plan. Complete corridors are not truly complete without the technology that actively manage them to move people and goods safely and efficiently. Transit leap and flexible fleet services become convenient choices with technology solutions that improve reliability and provide a high quality customer experience. Mobility hubs rely on smart infrastructure to provide smooth connections between modes and a safer walking and biking environment. And at the heart of the 5 big moves is the next operating system platform, which uses data and software applications to coordinate services and infrastructure. As a reminder, our goal is to achieve a transportation system that is fast, fair, and clean. Technology can help us get there. However, without proactive planning and policy interventions, these technologies could actually work against our goals to increase equity and to limit congestion and reduce vehicle miles traveled. The technology we're discussing today, when paired with the right policies, can make these goals a reality.
To understand how technology is transforming the world we live in, we first need to understand cycles of innovation. These are long-term economic cycles that last roughly 50 years. These cycles build upon each other. And innovation in any one particular cycle couldn't happen without the inventions in the previous cycles taking place. They trigger some type of groundbreaking technological achievement. Consider how the steam engine was the catalyst for the Industrial Revolution and for the locomotive, or how automobiles fundamentally transformed our transportation system, spawning new industries, redefining urban landscape and other aspects of our lives. These cycles aren't just economic in nature. They also create new social value chains. This is why they're called disruptive technologies. They literally reorganize the entire economy based upon discoveries that occurred during that time period. No one knew that computers would help enable the worldwide adoption of the internet, lay the foundation for cell phones and instant communication through social media like Twitter and TikTok, but it did. Our job is not to predict the future, but to be prepared and ready to adapt to the technological breakthroughs as they happen. And they will happen. Believe it or not, the computer age is waning, and today we're at the start of the 6th cycle of innovation. It started in 2010. The technologies that we will be discussing today and the technologies that will be invented in the next 10 to 20 years will fundamentally change how people think about moving goods and services from point A to point B. We need to make sure that the decisions we make don't just look at the innovations we've grown accustomed to, but they embrace the fact that the world is rapidly changing. Urban planners of a century ago were probably still focused on creating infrastructure that could accommodate the growing number of horses and carriages on the roads. They were probably planning for additional stables and feedlots in downtown and urban areas. Of course, looking back at with the benefit of hindsight, we know now that they actually needed to be preparing for the advent of the automobile. The 2021 regional plan is forward-looking, and it is the first plan to really start to prepare us for the fundamental shifts brought on by technology. There is no doubt that the adoption of technology is happening at a faster and faster rate. This chart shows the adoption of various technologies over the last century. As you can see, the technologies invented earlier in the century, those represented by the blue and the green lines, took far longer to be adopted than the ones in recent decades shown in yellow and orange. You can clearly see that the adoption of the automobile took 50 to 60 years to reach a point of ubiquity. Compare that to the current cycle on the right, where the hyper adoption of technology can achieve market penetration in a matter of years, not decades. The cell phone, the smartphone, and the internet were all adopted by at least 80% of the population in about 10 years. These new innovations become indispensable parts of our lives practically overnight. Can you imagine a world where you couldn't be ordering something off Amazon while sitting in a meeting, or catching up on the news, watching a video, paying your bills, texting someone, or hailing an Uber or Lyft, all from the same device? You really couldn't have done this 10 years ago. This is the pace of technology that we are dealing with as we are developing the 2021 regional plan. I'd like to focus on 3 technologies from the current cycle that are fundamentally transforming the transportation world as we know it. First is the Internet of Things. This is a network of ordinary objects that are embedded with internet-connected electronic sensors or software that can capture and exchange or receive data. I'm sure all of you have devices right now connected by Bluetooth to the Internet of Things. Believe it or not, the first non-computer that was ever connected to the internet was a toaster. It happened in 1990, the same year that Madonna released Vogue and MC Hammer released Can't Touch This. Researchers were able to send a signal that turned the toaster on, and then send another signal to the toaster to turn it off and eject the toast. But the bread still needed to be loaded manually. Today, roughly 30 years later, it's estimated that there are 46 billion devices connected to the internet. That's nearly 6 devices for every human on the face of the earth. And all those objects are capable of talking with each other. The connectivity created by the Internet of Things has almost limitless potential. And it also churns out an incredible amount of data. And this is what we refer to as big data. Big data is the name given to all the large and complex data sets that are created by the Internet of Things and by other means. This information can help us understand how people move around the region, and knowing this helps us create a transportation system that accurately addresses the transportation habits and needs of the region. Data collection has been with us for centuries. For most of human history, it has been collected by hand, and this took a lot of time and effort. But near the end of the 19th century, the punch card was invented, a way of recording data that could be read by a machine. And for the first time, instead of a human doing tabulation, it was a machine doing it. In 1880, it was estimated that it would take 8 years to process the data from the census collected that year. With the invention of the punch card, it only took 3 months. This sparked a century of advancement in computing, and by 1991, the World Wide Web was creating insane amounts of data that needed to be stored, processed, analyzed, and interpreted so that it could be understood. But it's beyond the capability of mere humans to process this much information. And that's where artificial intelligence and machine learning solve a very pressing problem. Artificial intelligence is a computer system that is able to perform tasks that normally require human intelligence, such as visual perception, speech recognition, and decision-making. This is stuff of sci-fi movies, but the technology to make computers capable of human-like decisions is here today. A decade ago, in 2011, IBM Watson computer won a game of Jeopardy. That same year, Apple released Siri, an artificial intelligence voice recognition system. And by 2012, the very next year, Google's brain computer had trained itself to recognize a cat. That's a huge leap for a machine that's basically dealing with ones and zeros. These may seem like simplistic examples, but they are also revolutionary. They are the type of leaps forward that are required to enable a driverless vehicle to recognize an object on the road and respond by braking. So to sum it up, things are changing quickly. In just 30 years, we have gone from a toaster attached to a modem to cars that can drive themselves. When you have billions of objects in the world communicating via the Internet of Things, and you have a way to collect and analyze big data they produce, and you have artificial intelligence making split-second decisions, You have the foundation to revolutionize every industry and every aspect of life, including transportation. So the question is, how do we leverage these technologies as a transportation planning agency? How do we put together a plan that prepares the region for the future, a future that is actually here now? The answer lies in the 5 big moves, including the next operating system contained in the regional plan. Let me turn it over to Antoinette Meyer, our Director of Mobility and Innovation, to walk us through how the regional plan will help put these technologies into action.
As Ray very eloquently pointed out, these enabling technologies have completely disrupted transportation, and they're here to stay. The automobile itself was a disruptive technology that pushed the horse and buggy into the ditch, so to speak. Over the last 50 years, the private car has dominated. The car is king is a common phrase, and our infrastructure has been primarily focused on the automobile, completely changing our urban and rural landscape. But now technology is transforming transportation once again, and as you'll hear today, we have the opportunity to guide it toward a better future. The focus of today's presentation is on 3 technology trends that are changing how the region's transportation system is used. These trends are also the topic of the Emerging Technology White Paper that is an attachment to your staff report. The first trend that has really made a mark is mobility as a service. It's an emerging paradigm shift from vehicle ownership being a necessity to easy access to a vehicle as a subscription service, or access to an array of public and private mobility services through a single app. The second trend is vehicle technologies. We're focused on connected, autonomous, and zero-emission vehicles that make mobility smarter, safer, and cleaner. And the third trend is smart cities and transportation systems that focus on technology and data that enables more efficient operations of hard infrastructure. So mobility as a service is most clearly seen in the explosion of app-enabled transportation. Services like Uber and Lyft completely took us by storm, and large portions of the population embraced them very quickly. Uber alone was handling 19 million trips a day in 2019. Dockless bikes and scooters popped up overnight in 2018, delighting some and earning scorn from others. But in their second year of operation, 136 million rides were taken. And microtransit, such as on-demand shuttle services, are starting to take hold across the country, making public transit more responsive to the needs of riders in cities as small as West Sacramento. Vehicle technologies are advancing at a very different pace. The transition to zero-emission vehicles was happening very slowly. In fact, the first electric motor was developed nearly 200 years ago. But ambitious climate change policies are driving the technology forward, and almost all major US auto manufacturers have set a date in the very near future when they will only produce and sell electric vehicles. Safety benefits abound from connected vehicles, which use wireless technology to communicate with each other and the world around them. However, the transition to fully connected vehicles has been quite slow, in large part because the regulatory environment is lagging. Predictions for fully autonomous vehicles suggest that it will be a decade or more before the technology is widespread, but 55 companies have permits to test autonomous vehicles on California roads with a safety driver, and now 6 companies have permits for completely driverless testing. This means no safety driver is required in the vehicle at all. And cars are becoming smarter and safer. In 2018, 41 million vehicles in the US were embedded with cellular technology, and at least one advanced driver assistance feature was available in 93% of new vehicles. Smart cities and transportation systems is the third big trend. Infrastructure embedded with sensors can share data and provide real-time conditions. This can include things like streetlights and roadways or even buildings. The technology exists today, but the investment in the technology is not widespread. All of these innovations disrupting transportation as we know it are being led by the private sector and will continue to be. We don't see it as government's role to compete with private sector innovation, but we do see ourselves as collaborators and regulators who can partner with private industry to harness the benefits of these technological breakthroughs. Without that partnership, new innovations can introduce chaos on our streets. Take dockless scooters as an example. A lack of regulation when they first arrived caused concern and derision. When technologies are coupled with public policy, though, they do present an opportunity to make transportation much more equitable, safe, and sustainable. So rather than taking an overly restrictive stance, we can develop policy to guide it. Likewise, it's incumbent upon private companies to respect the law and embrace a collaborative approach that is respectful of our communities. Ultimately, new mobility does not fit neatly within our traditional regulatory frameworks or within city or county boundaries. It requires flexibility to adopt new forms of mobility, all the while collaborating with each other to achieve mutual goals. For this reason, we formed a vision advisory panel of industry experts to provide input on how technology can make the most of our current infrastructure and how it will affect planning for future infrastructure. Our panel consisted of 11 Southern California industry leaders representing sectors like wireless communications, clean technology, and new mobility services. And today we are very pleased to bring some of these industry experts to you so you can hear from them firsthand and ask your own questions. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it back to Colleen to kick off the panel segment of our presentation today.
Thank you, Antoinette. So that brings us to the panel. It's an honor to have several luminaries from the private sector on our panel today. And leading and moderating this discussion will be Sandag's very own entrepreneur in residence, Sanjeev Nanda. Sanjeev joined us in September of 2019 to serve as a technology strategic advisor. He has over 200 granted patents and more than 25 years of research and development, leadership, and management experience at Qualcomm in the telecommunication and semiconductor industry. We're so fortunate to have him on the team, and it's my pleasure to turn it over to Sanjeev at this time to introduce and lead our esteemed panel.
And thank you, Colleen. It is now my pleasure to welcome our distinguished panel of experts to discuss with us the technology trends that will determine what our regional transportation looks like in the future. I will start with brief presentations from the panelists. Panelists, we hear that the future of mobility is shared, electric, connected, and autonomous. Each of these technology trends is at different levels of maturity and adoption. And I'll ask you to guide us on what we might see and when. So first we'll have Justine Johnson, mobility strategist with Ford Mobility, who will discuss shared mobility and mobility as a service. She'll be followed by Dr. Thalis Bailak, Managing Director with Aspire, a National Science Foundation Research Center on Vehicle Electrification Technologies and Infrastructure. So electrification, who will discuss zero-emission vehicles. Finally, Nakul Duggal, our local Senior Vice President and General Manager at Automotive at Qualcomm, will provide insights on connected and autonomous vehicles. So we'll start with Justine Johnson. Justine Johnson joined Ford Mobility's City Solutions team in 2018, and she's been working with municipalities and communities on mobility solutions that help move people and goods more efficiently and effectively. Before that, for 8 years, she resided in New York City, working on transportation initiatives under the Bloomberg and de Blasio administrations, including the New York City Taxi and Limousine Commission. Justine holds a bachelor's degree from Hampton University and 2 master's degrees from the University of Southern California. So over to you, Justine.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Justine Johnson. I am a mobility strategist with Ford Mobility. I am based in the Los Angeles area, and my coverage scope is the Southern California region. We can go to the next slide, please. So I always just like to ground us in this image here. This is our executive chair, Bill Ford, who did a TED Talk in 2011 where he talked about the mobility paradox. Essentially, cities are growing rapidly. However, the infrastructure to support the demand is really struggling for current and future demand. Ideally, what he said is that the mobility model that we have today will not work tomorrow. Interestingly, Ford Mobility was birthed in 2016 with a strong desire to liberate the human journey through innovation. Next slide. So now I'll talk a little bit about a suite of our mobility offerings and services through Ford Mobility. I'll start off first with the City One Challenge, which is a program that really focuses on a few core areas, which are equity, accessibility, safety, and sustainability, and really tackling tough mobility questions around these 4 topic areas. The City One team works very closely with local residents and stakeholders to really understand some of the mobility challenges that are impacting local communities, and also working very closely with entrepreneurs to really understand and deploy mobility offerings and solutions that can address some of these concerns. So that's our City One team. Next slide, please. In terms of our work with safety, we have a traffic and safety analytics platform called Safety Insights. And essentially, this is a tool for transportation professionals to really understand some of the vulnerabilities on our roadways, and specifically as it relates to safety. What this platform does is that it utilizes crash data, and that's from either vehicles or from bicycles, as well as traffic volume data and for connected vehicle data. Essentially, if you're looking at this image, you'll see red circles, and those are red hotspots. And these are locations where a crash has occurred, but really our focus is really understanding what happened before the crash started. So really looking at harsh braking and extreme accelerations to really understand the vulnerabilities within the roadways. So really helping transportation professionals deploy resources effectively. Next slide, please. In terms of our work with moving people in micromobility, we have a micromobility business, which is Spin Scooter. Spin Scooter is a dockless e-scooter, which allows for riders to really think about the first and the last mile and really moving people within that first and last mile range. Spin Scooter has a nice complement to the existing transportation system, as it does allow for people who are especially getting off of transit to really utilize a scooter system. So something that we are really pleased, and we have scooters operating in the city of San Diego through a permit. So we always ask for permission first before bringing scooters into market. Next, in terms of transit, we work very closely with transit operators through our business with Transloc. Transloc really works on fixed and as well as on-demand routing. And it is really a software that helps transit operators to really maximize their system efficiencies. So we're really pleased to continue to work with a number of cities and municipalities. And these are entities that do have vehicles that are doing transportation services. Next slide. And another fun part of Ford Mobility's portfolio is autonomous vehicles. I always like to make sure that we're grounded in terms of understanding that every city is very unique and complex, and some of those complexities range from driving behavior, topography, climate, infrastructure, so many more topics related to that. But really, we're focused on building a business and as well as testing our self-driving systems with our partner Argo AI. And so essentially right now we're testing our service in Washington, D.C., where this image is here, Austin, Texas, and as well as Miami. And so we really want to make sure that we're launching a commercial self-driving service that focuses on ride hailing and as well as with goods delivery. Next slide, please. And lastly, in terms of our pathway to electrification, at Ford Motor Company, we're always in pursuit of policies and programs that are in support of our environment, our customers, and as well as our businesses. In doing so, we were one of 4 automakers that stood alongside the California Air Resources Board with a commitment to reduce emissions. Also, we've invested $22 billion in electric vehicles through 2025, and that's globally within our products and services. So something we're very committed towards. In terms of a few products that are coming online, especially on the electric side, that is the all-electric Mustang Mach-E, which is available now. The e-Transit, which is an e-cargo van, which will be available and then the all-electric E-F50, which will be available in mid-2022. Next slide. So that being said, I do want to say thank you for taking the time to learn a little bit more about Ford Mobility's offerings and services. We really see this as a very important time to work very closely with cities and looking forward to driving innovation to really improve mobility access for all. So thank you.
So thank you, Justine. Thanks for that informative presentation. I see that your the topics you presented are so well aligned with our 5 big moves with Next OS and with the flexible fleets and so on. So thanks so much. Moving on, we'll now move to Dr. Talis Blaylock, who will discuss vehicle electrification technologies and infrastructure. Dr. Blaylock is a highly accomplished technology executive with a unique combination of experience in technology development, business management in Fortune 500 companies, as well as startups. As the managing director of Aspire, the NSF Center, Dr. Blaylock leverages over 20 years of experience to improve health and quality of life for everyone by catalyzing sustainable and equitable electrification across the transportation industry. Dr. Blaylock holds a PhD in electrical engineering from Stanford. So over to you, Talis.
Thank you, Sanjeev. I appreciate that. So people may not be familiar with the National Science Foundation Engineering Research Centers. So the National Science Foundation chooses areas that are of strategic interest, and Aspire has been mandated to become a trusted guide in our transition to electric transportation. And this is going to impact not only our transportation system, but also our electric utility industry and many other industries. Next slide, please. So our vision is sustainable and equitable transportation for all. By enabling widespread electrification across all vehicle classes, and this means passenger automotive, as well as delivery vans, as well as large trucks, we are going to be able to win on many different levels. And this has to be across all adoption groups. So not just for the people that can afford to buy Teslas, but for everyone. If we set up the right infrastructure in the US, back slide, please, thank you, then we can enable lower cost transportation for everyone. So cheaper transportation than gas or diesel vehicles, which will improve our air quality for everyone. And if you look at areas like National City that are directly across from the ports, where you see a lot of diesel soot and other pollution from the ports, it not only will improve their air quality and health, but it will decrease their health costs. So there is an area of social equity that comes into play in this as well, because the areas that are most impacted by pollution are ones that have the lowest socioeconomic areas. Those people cannot afford to move out of the pollution areas. So the more we electrify and improve the air quality, the better it is for everyone. Next slide, please. So a little bit about what Aspire is. We're headquartered at Utah State University. We have core campuses at University of Colorado Boulder, University of Texas El Paso, Purdue, and University of Auckland. We also have a number of affiliated universities, in which you have 4 listed here. There are others that will be joining. And we are tied in with 4 of the national labs, looking from Idaho National Lab, National Renewable Energy Lab, if you can get the next build-in slide, please, as well as Argonne National Lab and Oak Ridge National Lab. We also have a number of different industry members and innovation members, of which Sandag is one of our innovation members. So across the center, we have over 60 faculty, over 160 students, and over 50 industry and innovation members, giving us a wide base to build solutions for what is needed in the industry. Next slide, please. The purpose of this slide is to just give you an idea of how widespread electrification will become. You can see the bus in the middle, and we can have wired charging there for that as it's coming in, or we can build in wireless charging underneath, so when it pulls up to the stop, it can charge. But across this, from in San Diego, you have the trolley, which is electrified transportation already. But as we bring into passenger cars, as we bring into big trucks, there are a lot of different technologies that we need to be able to put in place. And there are a lot of different solutions that we can put in place so that you don't have to worry about where to charge. It becomes part of what you do. So whether we're plugging in at home or at work or in parking garages, or whether we're pulling over charging places because we've embedded charging where we're going to be parking, so we don't have to get out and plug in. But we can also take that same technology and we can build it in roadways and really change the game for some of these. So you can charge while you're driving. And that allows you to put in a smaller battery in the vehicle, so your vehicle costs less, and it really makes some of the infrastructure challenges much easier when you go through this as well. So as we look at the picture, we're looking across all different types of transportation in terms of how do we build out a future that works for everyone across all types of transit. Next slide, please. So I want to talk about just a couple of different examples to give you an idea of some of the work that's already ongoing. So in Salt Lake City, we have a project at the Intermodal Hub where you have an electric trolley that comes in, similar to your trolley in San Diego. And as it pulls in, it puts big spikes on the electrical grid. And the challenge as you build out infrastructure for building in electric buses, which we have electric buses coming down from University of Utah. We have a number of those now that's going to build out to be over 100 electric buses in the system that comes in. If you don't look at this from an intelligent point of view, you build the infrastructure on top of each one for what's necessary. If you do it in a smart manner, where you have the spikes for the electric trolley, you fill in the demand in between there. So the cost of the infrastructure drops, and you're able to address many more usages. So electric buses, cars, Lyft and Uber drivers, as well as your electric trolley for far less cost. We also have a pilot that's ongoing at the Port of Los Angeles where we have a 500 kilowatt fast charger working inside of the port for some of the port vehicles to decrease the pollution there. It's not listed here, but we have a megawatt charging plan with Kenworth Trucks and UPS at the Port of Seattle and Port of Portland. Now, this charging level is 1,000 times more than what you're seeing at most of your charging areas. And finally, the state of Utah in the last legislative session set aside $20 million for us to do a pilot demonstration in an area just south of the Salt Lake City Airport, where we're going to be able to put these pieces together, show charging in-road for the drayage trucks that are working in the inland port. Being able to show how the cargo is moved in those containers. This is a Union Pacific Railroad hub that moves 1 million cargo containers per year. But in addition, we're going to be looking at some of the hoteling. So trucks that are parking overnight and running the engines all night in Utah, we'll be able to have a way for them to plug in and power the cabs. Now, this comes into play in San Diego at some place like the border, where you have trucks that are queued up, and how do we enable them to not pollute that entire time, but to actually have the power they need while they're waiting, whether it's an AC unit or whether it's a different type of vehicle. So there's a lot of great technologies. The technology exists. It's a question of being able to put it in place and get it out. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Talis. That's really insightful. And I think we're, as SANDAG, we're really glad that we're able to join Aspire and learn about these technologies, and we look forward to potential collaborations. We'll move on now to, and I'd like to has my great pleasure to welcome my good friend and former colleague, Nakul Duggal. Nakul serves as Senior Vice President and General Manager, Automotive for Qualcomm. His responsibilities include development into the digital cockpit that we're all familiar with, smart transportation, the connected car, autonomous driving. Nakul has worked at Qualcomm Automotive since 2011 and has been instrumental in building the company's automotive portfolio and global footprint. Nakul holds a BS Electrical Engineering degree from MS University, India, and a master's degree in business administration from UCLA Anderson School of Management. So over to you, Nakul.
Thank you very much, Sanjeev, and good morning, everybody. It's a privilege to be attending and be able to have the opportunity to present here today. Next slide, please. Automotive is going through transformation that has not been seen in the history of the industry. There is just so much of change. It is around us. as consumers, all of you as responsible stakeholders in terms of improving safety, improving congestion, have to be able to think about the importance of technology and how quickly technology that we are all using and facing and dealing with in our day-to-day lives has the ability to really change the way that our roadway systems, our transportation systems evolve over time. Next slide, please. We as a technology company, based in San Diego, I've been with the company since '95, are really privileged to be able to contribute not only as a business, but from a safety perspective. How do we actually focus on improving the overall congestion levels, making cars safer, making our cities safer? And I'll try and spend a few minutes today to share with you what we've been doing in this space. But before we get there, to give you a sense of our association with the automotive space, we've actually been involved in automotive technology for almost 20 years now. We have a large number of vehicles on the road. We have many different partnerships globally across every automaker. And what that allows us to do is to be able to bring technology and build products that can drive this change down to every vehicle that gets deployed, that gets rolled out of our factory floors, and even influence aftermarket opportunities. Next slide, please. We focus on 4 major systems in the context of Vision Zero, which we believe in wholeheartedly, and I'll give you a sense as to what we've been doing in this specific space. Making vehicles smarter is a necessary condition. They have to ply on safer roads, which means infrastructure has to be more intelligent. You have to be able to influence the user experience, make the user much more aware of their surroundings. And you have to be able to upgrade the systems that we have deployed today that have to be more aware of vehicles, of pedestrians, of various new services, micromobility, new transit services that are coming along. Next slide, please. What this requires fundamentally is for us to be able to evolve the technologies. 5G is something that you hear about a lot nowadays. One thing that we have focused a lot of effort on is to make sure that next generation wireless technologies take into account the importance of the transportation ecosystem, the importance of how do we make our roadways, our cars, our cities safer, and build technology evolution paths that make the next generation wireless technology to be much more aware of its surroundings. What this has allowed us to then do is to be able to design products that make the next generation vehicle equipped with the right technology needed to be able to be much more safe, much more connected to its environment from a safety perspective. Next slide. We pioneered a technology called cellular V2X back in 2016. This was something that we did on the backs of the wireless innovation that the company has driven for many years. This was a global initiative, and we are proud to share that in a fairly short period of time, we've had adoption across all of China. We've had adoption across a variety of different automakers in the US, including Ford. And we are now making this technology part and parcel of all of the products that we build and provide into the automotive ecosystem, so that automakers, as they design cars to be connected, they can actually design these vehicles to have much more safety technology. Cellular V2X is a little different from what you might imagine as wireless technology that is provided by cellular providers like an AT&T or Verizon. This technology allows you to be able to connect cars to roadside infrastructure, cars to other cars, cars to pedestrians or bicyclists, without actually having the dependency of a cellular network. There is no SIM card needed. This is technology that is running on dedicated frequency spectrum that is reserved for safety services, and it makes safety the center point for why we are deploying these technologies. Next slide, please. Fundamentally, for us, as part of everything that we are doing in the automotive business, making V2X available across every endpoint, every mobile endpoint, whether it is a cell phone, a bicycle, a vehicle, or fixed traffic infrastructure. This creates the template, it creates the blueprint for why we need to be able to go do this to accomplish Vision Zero. Next slide, please. I'll give you a few examples of what we have already started to see in a very short period of time. We started engaging with the Chinese ecosystem about 4 years ago. And in a short period of time, they have evolved their infrastructure, highway infrastructure, urban arterial infrastructure to be able to support what is called I2V, or infrastructure to vehicle capability. This allows vehicles that are flying on highways to have real-time information about speed, about local changes in conditions, weather, construction. Next slide, please. In addition, there is also support for vehicle-to-vehicle use cases. So the ability to be able to be aware of a traffic jam that is not visible to the driver, but that is coming up and is communicated through a wireless sensor, allows the driver to be much better prepared to avoid a collision. If there is a vehicle that is stopped or in a blind spot, this type of information is readily available. The cost of being able to add this technology into the vehicle is just incrementally higher from what automakers are already planning to add in terms of the capability to connect cars to the internet. And this allows V2X to become something that becomes pervasive in a very short period of time. Next slide, please. In San Diego, we started a project, a proof of concept project with Sandag, with Caltrans, the city of Chula Vista, back in 2019. And the focus here was to accomplish something very similar to the examples that I shared with you earlier, where we focused on communication between roadside units and onboard units within vehicles to be able to share basic safety messages, and also over time expand this to be able to address a much larger part of the ecosystem. Next slide. And where I'll end with is we are also spending a lot of time to make sure that vehicles that we are designing have a roadmap to autonomous driving. As my colleagues mentioned in their remarks, active safety through camera systems, through radar systems are becoming more and more standard and will result in prevention of accidents, prevention of fatalities. It is something that is part and parcel of our overall roadmap. Next slide, please. And thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks for your presentation. I was working with you on some of these technologies, and my favorite statement is that our next generation will wonder what a blind spot is. In any case, so the three revolutions that you guys are speaking about are shared, connected and automated, and electric. And so I'd like to take some time and kind of dig into some of these concepts: shared, connected, and automated, and electric. So let's first discuss the maturity of the technology. Are these technologies ready, or are they a little distance away? So Justine, my first question is to you. Ride hail is a convenient way to hail a privately owned taxi cab. We all have become used to it. But there's something ride share, which involves sharing a car or shuttle with multiple passengers. And ride hail, has proven to be have to kind of increase vehicle miles traveled, while ride share has the potential to lower VMT by moving more passengers per vehicle. So do you see the potential for ride share and microtransit, and do you see what are the technology impediments for us to see large scale deployment?
Yeah, so thank you for that question. I'd say a few things. One, I think we have to be mindful and just aware that it will require, ride sharing will require a variety of vehicle types and vehicle forms. So that's something that is going to be very important to really promoting and advocating shared usage on different types of modes. That being said, I would say ride hailing is a legacy system, something we've been doing for quite a while. And we just now, I'd say, say, linked innovation to that. Traditionally, that was street hailing, where essentially we would hail down a car, taxi in that case. And then it transitioned to actually calling a car service and arranging for a ride. And now through the power of our smartphones, doing it with the simple press of a button. I think ride hailing has really allowed, just in terms of a variety of different resources, to actually get to people more efficiently and effectively. I'd say in terms of ride sharing, that should be always a big component of moving more people and also reducing BMT. I think ride sharing is important from all the way from mass transit, which is initially the backbone of ride sharing, and kind of how that trickles down to micro transit and how that trickles down to micromobility. So all of those are very important to really moving a lot of people and reducing BMT.
Right. In fact, yeah. Let's figure out a way to integrate these technologies with our systems. Nakul, next question goes to you. Despite the obvious safety benefits that you spoke about of connected vehicles and the availability of technology for connected vehicles, progress has been slow. I recall that the Ann Arbor connected vehicle pilot was actually conducted in 2012. And then meanwhile, automated driver assistance systems we're all experiencing, such as rear camera, lane keeping, adaptive highway cruise control, among other features. However, in 2020, road fatalities went up 8% over 2019, and pedestrian deaths went up 20%. Possibly attributed to higher speeds and reckless driving. So the question is, when can we see these technology developments like connected vehicles coming to the market sooner? And can we expect ADAS features to become widespread and drive pedestrian and bicycle fatalities on our roads to near zero? That's the question.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent question. Look, I think if you think about the amount of technology that is going into vehicles today, considerably higher. Every car that gets shipped today is connected. As you mentioned, there are a lot of ADAS systems that are going into cars. The thing to keep in mind is when you build a vehicle that needs to be connected to its environment, where it needs to actually be connected to the intersection, connected into the traffic system, be able to have near real-time access to its environment, it requires coordination across a variety of different stakeholders. We started focusing our cellular V2X efforts in 2016, really around the same time globally. In China, we were able to see traction much faster because there was a top-down mandate where it was deemed very important to be able to improve congestion, to be able to reduce fatalities. I think you asked the question earlier, Sanjeev, about the readiness of the technology. The technology is ready. It is getting deployed at scale. I think in the US, we've made a lot of progress with the FCC actually setting aside spectrum for cellular V2X late last year. But the deployment has been slow, mostly because there is a very different set of approaches, frameworks in terms of how funding, how agreements get implemented in terms of being able to make these large-scale infrastructure projects happen. However, we've been working with a variety of different cities, municipalities to be able to make this push forward, and very pleased to be working with SANDAC in this specific area as well.
Yes, look forward to more discussion on that and potentially more collaboration, Nakul. Thales, zero-emission vehicles are a sure way to drive emission reductions. There are aggressive policies now at the state level, and all auto manufacturers are announcing plans to meet these aggressive targets. So are there technology hurdles to widespread EV adoption?
So I'm less concerned about the technology pieces as I am about some of the policy and the time frame for these. So if we set up the same gas station model for electric vehicles, we're going to miss opportunities to really decrease the infrastructure costs and to make charging ubiquitous. So one of the things that we're trying to do is get the message out to some of the technologies and the capabilities of those technologies to lower costs. From a challenge, there are some things like Section 111 of the Federal Highway Code, which prohibit the use on the right-of-ways for federal highways. So if you've ever wondered why when you stop at a rest stop, all you can buy is a limited set of things from a vending machine, that's because in the 1960s, they were worried about, businesses off the interstate highways. And so they limited what could be purchased. But the implications today is that we can't charge electric vehicles in those areas. There are a lot of technologies that we would like to be able to bring to bear to use the federal highways. And this is an example of a policy that we need to have changed to really enable widespread adoption of different charging areas. So from a technology point of view, there's certainly improvements that we will see. We're going to see better batteries. We're going to see a number of other things, but we really need to address some of the policy issues and make sure that when we're doing the planning for what is going to take decades to roll out all of the infrastructure pieces, we understand the technology solutions and we put the right plans in place.
So that's interesting, and you've kind of answered a question that I was going to ask you later about policy needs that we need to implement. But great. On fully autonomous driving, I think we're all anxious to hear about the panel's views on fully autonomous driving. It's offered as a panacea to a variety of transportation problems. Safety, access, and equity all will be solved by this technology that's coming. So to all the panelists, what is your prediction of when we'll have fully autonomous vehicles, and what will be the mix of privately owned autonomous vehicles versus rideshare fleets? Perhaps start with Justine.
Sure. So thank you for the question. At Ford, and kind of as I mentioned in the presentation, we won't be selling autonomous vehicles for individual purposes. So our goal and focus is really to launch a commercial service that does support ride hailing and as well as goods delivery. So that's the work that we're doing. As mentioned before, we're currently testing our self-driving systems in a number of cities. And so really we want to do that because I think it's very important for us to really pressure test the system and also understand a variety of different complexities around driving behavior and more. So a lot of that is happening right now, and we're very excited to continue this work and to really scale accordingly.
Hi, Nakul, are you still on? Yes.
I'm back, yeah.
Oh, great. Did you have a comment on fully autonomous driving? When we'll see it happen, and what will be the mix of privately owned versus rideshare fleets?
Yeah, I think, in Justine's comments, when she mentioned that fully autonomous is very specific to the city infrastructure, the city environment, I fully agree with that comment. Look, I think driver assistance is something that is very much focused on improving the safety of the vehicle. As you start to move towards more automation, you start to bring in more convenience features, better productivity, but the driver is still responsible for the vehicle. As you remove the driver completely from the picture, what I think you have to keep in mind is what is the purpose? What is the reason to be able to go do this? Is this happening on long-haul trucks where you have infrastructure that can support this capability? Is it happening in a taxi where you can add a lot of technology to be able to make the robotaxi completely independent of the driver, but then you're building a robot that is not necessarily priced to be able to sell as a typical passenger vehicle? I think the inflection point where fully automated solutions start to get deployed is a combination of how advanced the infrastructure is, how advanced the cities and highways are where we will actually be able to support full automation, and then of course the cost of the endpoint being made to be fully automated. I expect we are within a decade of this technology being more broadly available, but it will of course depend upon the environment and the business case that we need to go drive it.
Yeah, thanks. You have a comment, Talis? Please go ahead.
Yes, please. So I think we need to make sure that we step back for a minute and realize that we have fully autonomous vehicles that exist today. So in some airports, the tram that takes you along between different parts of the airport is autonomous. So there's a big leap from there to being able to get in your own personal car that drives you anywhere outside of the city and everything else. So this, like all other technologies, is going to come in stages. You can already ride in certain areas of the country in, Waymo vehicles or other vehicles that have a driver that's sitting and watching in that. So we're going to go from different types of transportation. So maybe some trams or buses or other things. Then you'll do vehicles that exist in a very well contained environment, which has been mapped well. It's going to take us a long time to where you can go out on roads that are not well maintained in snow or rain or other conditions. So it will be a transition, but we need to recognize that some of the technology is already here. We're not even recognizing that it's fully autonomous. And we do believe that a lot of these vehicles will be electrified as we move through this. So that's a key piece of technology that comes in.
Yeah, absolutely. Talis, you mentioned a little bit earlier about the policy changes that are needed for these technologies to get deployed sooner and start serving us. So for the other panelists as well, maybe we'll try to wrap up the panel pretty soon. There's other things on the agenda. So to all the panelists, what types of policies, regulations, mandates, incentives can you highlight that will allow us to achieve the public goals that we have and allow private businesses to prosper as well? And what investment do you believe public sector should be making to better prepare for the future of transportation? And if you can stick to one and a half minutes or something like that, please. Go ahead, Talis, first.
I'll go ahead and kick off. As I mentioned before, there are some specific policy hurdles where legislation needs to be changed to make it easier. I think some of the investments in terms of proving out the technologies and demonstrating that, but this is going to happen through public-private partnerships. And so strategic investments by the government to show what's possible, to establish the business models, and to be able to bring in the private investment is critical. California has already done that in many places. They're leading the nation. And we hope that with some of the new infrastructure money that will be coming out, this will also enable this on a more widespread place and demonstrate for the nation that electric vehicles are here today and that they're going to make the world a much better place as we decrease air pollution and lower the costs if we do this correctly.
Yeah, thanks. Nakul, you want to go next?
Yeah, look, I think, Vision Zero, where we reduce and potentially completely eliminate any fatalities, I think is, in my mind, a very important metric for success, simply because the technology that is required to make this happen exists today. So from a policy perspective, what I would maybe focus on is V2X is something that has had a lot of promise, has shown a lot of promise over many, many years. We are now starting to see this getting deployed and make an impact. There is complexity in the US in terms of how policy for deployment such as V2X, what is the type of decision-making framework that is required. What I would highly recommend everybody that is in a position to be able to influence this is to spend the effort in understanding what does it take for the next generation infrastructure to be capable of being aware of how V2X technologies can be used to reduce fatalities, to reduce the number of accidents on our roadways. And from our perspective as a private company, we are certainly doing everything we can to make sure that our products our ecosystems, whether it is in handsets or in bikes or in cars. We have the infrastructure available to be able to go actually make this reality.
Thanks. And Justine, you get the last word on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think just kind of echoing what a lot of my fellow panelists are talking about, completely agreed there. I also just, another point to add to this is that I think policies that are in aligned with equity and as well as accessibility is something that really is going to be very important. Really thinking about the distribution of resources and transportation resources to really fill a lot of the gaps that we have within our transit network is going to be very important from a policy perspective. We have to build resilient and redundant systems to really achieve the goal of really shared, connected, and the list kind of goes on from there. So I think it is very critical that we really spend a lot of our time thinking about fair distribution of those new technology advances and resources, and that we have the complementary infrastructure available at the state and as well as the local level to really achieve a lot of these goals.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. I think, Nakul, you especially, and also Talis, gave us a call to action to SANDAG and our local jurisdictions to do some actions to enable these technologies. So thanks, everyone. I really appreciated your insight. If you can, please stay around for Q&A later on, but if you need to go, we really appreciate the time you gave us, and I'll now turn it back to Colleen.
Sanjeev, thank you, Justine, Talis, and Nicole. What a great discussion, and I think truly aligns with everything we're thinking about in the regional plan, that the technology is here, much of it is here, there's much to come, and the opportunity for us to work closely with the private sector to bring these things to reality in a way that supports all of our goals for equity and climate and safety. So anyway, very, very great panel presentation, and we hope that we have time here at the end to have some discussion. So with that, I'm going to ask Antoinette to conclude with an overview of how we're taking all of this and incorporating these concepts into the regional plan. Antoinette.
So you've heard there are clearly many emerging opportunities for our region to consider, but it's also important to keep in mind that technology is just an enabler. It won't solve our problems on its own, and it could exacerbate problems if we're not actively planning for it and developing policies to guide it. Let's take a look at some of the key strengths and opportunities for each of these technology trends, as well as some of the weaknesses and threats if we take a passive approach. So the rapid adoption of app-enabled services shows really great potential for mobility as a service, where owning a car is no longer necessary. People are much more comfortable these days with sharing a ride with other people or pooling for the right price. In fact, today, 21% of Uber and Lyft trips are pooled in our region. And this cultural shift could lead to more ride sharing if we have the right incentives in place. Mobility as a service also appears to be offering more transportation options for low-income individuals who rely on public transit. 41% of people in our region who use ride-hailing services live in a household that earns less than $50,000 a year and are less likely to have access to a personal car. This suggests that these services are filling a gap. Seamlessly merging mobility as a service with the region's transit system will ultimately require private sector operators to share their data and integrate their services into the same platform. And until this happens, this technology could pose a hurdle to us reaching our goals. For example, ride-hailing services are currently increasing the number of vehicles miles traveled, which increases greenhouse gas emissions and congestion. In fact, 40% of miles traveled by ride-hail drivers have no passenger in the vehicle. Ultimately, achieving our goals will require policies that integrate services and move more people in fewer vehicles. That's policies like HOV lanes that give priority to higher occupancy modes of transportation, and an integrated pricing system that encourages pooling and more efficient operations. In the case of zero-emission vehicles, public policy is actually playing a major role. The state is developing regulations that require all new passenger cars sold by 2035 to be zero-emission vehicles. This is a big win for climate action, since 41% of emissions in California are from transportation. The challenge we face, though, is that the electric vehicle charging infrastructure is not keeping pace. If we want to give the public the confidence they need to go electric, we have to plan for and invest in public charging stations and ensure everyone has access to those chargers. This means we need to streamline permitting practices to deploy chargers faster. As you heard, vehicle technology can save many lives. The shocking and sad news that in 2020, pedestrian deaths and traffic fatalities were up, but VMT was down. Most accidents are caused by human error. People are more distracted than ever on their phones, and speeding and reckless behavior is on the rise. The good news, though, is that the private sector is investing in more connected and autonomous technologies that can prevent accidents and save lives. Unlike electric vehicles, though, where policy is really driving the technology forward, federal policy around connected and autonomous technology is lagging, and so is the investment in digital infrastructure needed to make a complete connected transportation system work. Another really important consideration is the impact that connected and autonomous vehicles could have on vehicle miles traveled. The possibility of using travel time to do more productive things makes traveling longer distance far less onerous, and this ease of travel could increase cars on the road. Also, there's a risk of vehicles traveling without occupants between trips if policy is not in place to discourage these unintended consequences. Smart city and transportation technologies already exist today, and they can make our infrastructure much more responsive and adaptable. However, the investment in technology like sensors is not widespread. High speed and uninterrupted broadband connectivity is an absolute necessity for smart cities and transportation, but today we have a digital divide. Large portions of the region don't have adequate broadband connectivity. Until they do, they won't be able to benefit from this technology. It's also important to remember that technology alone does not make a city smart. It's how the city and the county uses the data that's derived from the technology that make it smart. And we have a lot of work to do as a region to build those capabilities to use data more effectively and operate transportation cooperatively. But this is where the Next OS comes in. It helps our regional transportation system benefit from the vast amounts of data available from the growing number of connected and smart devices. First, the Next OS is not a piece of technology or software. It's not a major transportation operating and management center, and it's not a transportation app for your phone. It is simply a data exchange. At the beginning of the presentation, Ray Major described the 3 digital transformations: the Internet of Things, big data, and artificial intelligence. The Next OS incorporates all 3 of these transformations. It provides public and private transportation providers access to the big data that's collected from our connected transportation system. Data from smart infrastructure, smart cars, smartphones is aggregated, analyzed, and then artificial intelligence allows us to use the data to operate efficiently and make well-informed decisions. Next OS can also produce reliable and relevant information that can be shared with the public to help them make better decisions about when and how and where to travel. So let's look at some really practical examples of the Next OS, starting with smart intersections. Historically, signalized intersections have been focused on reducing delays for high volumes of cars, and this is often to the detriment of pedestrians and other vulnerable populations like seniors and people with visual impairments. A smart and connected intersection system, though, collects and processes data from traffic signal controllers, sensors, and connected vehicles to monitor and adjust signal operations and respond to the needs of all users and modes of transportation. Detection technology that increases crossing time can create a safer environment for cyclists and pedestrians. Sensors could prioritize connected buses or freight or emergency vehicles along a corridor. Sensors can also provide data on collisions and near misses, so unsafe intersections can be identified for improvements, helping cities achieve their Vision Zero goals. We can achieve many goals around safety and congestion with a regional system of smart intersections, and the Next OS is what makes this possible. Today's curbs are primarily used for parking cars, but new demands are turning curbs into valuable real estate. Curbs are pickup and drop-off spots for ride-hailing services and deliveries. They're places for bus stops. They're where we put safe infrastructure for bikes and micromobility services. And they've become a venue for outdoor dining, a trend that may continue past the pandemic. The curb has truly become a hot commodity, but the way that we manage the curb has not changed in the face of these new demands. We use paint and static signs that can cause confusion. But this is where the Next OS comes in. It collects and processes curb data from sensors and connected vehicles so cities can respond to these competing demands. So in a chaotic and busy area like the San Ysidro point of entry, where there are taxis and jitneys and bikes and ride-hail vehicles, a curb management system could orchestrate passenger pickup and drop-off, directing vehicles and people to safe spots. In a typical commercial district, The Next OS can provide more seamless access to the curb throughout the day and night. Before the morning commute, the curb could be scheduled by freight providers to deliver goods and stock stores and restaurants. And then freight gives way to transit and flexible fleets dropping off employees, some of who may enjoy breakfast or coffee in a pop-up parklet on their way to work. At noon, when the lunch rush begins, the curb could be used for food vendors or outdoor dining. And in the evening, passenger movement continues as people leave work and head on to their evening activities. The Next OS can help facilitate all of these different uses. Research shows that one of the biggest barriers for people to take transit and a major frustration for people who rely on transit is convenience and reliability. People want dependable, real-time information and service that is fast and efficient. Better data collection and analytics provided through the Next OS can help make transit services more reliable and more convenient. Real-time data allows operators to make decisions that improve on-time performance and make quick changes to routing and stops to avoid any unnecessary delays. Data collected from vehicle sensors can be used for predictive maintenance to help avoid unexpected repairs. And then data can also be shared with third-party apps so customers can take transit with the same ease as ordering an Uber or a Lyft. So this slide shows many of our active projects that are bringing the Next OS to life and preparing us for technology. It includes technical planning for the Regional Smart Intersection System and Curb Management System. We also have a major incentive program for electric vehicle charging infrastructure. We were recently awarded a $9.3 million grant from the US Department of Transportation to deploy Next OS solutions in the border region, including a regional border management system for the new port of entry. And our digital equity strategy will bridge the digital divide and bring connectivity to the entire region. Bringing this to life is a big lift. It will take a lot of work in coordination with your cities and county. To make the best use of disruptive technology, we have to be flexible and forward-thinking, so technology starts to become part of everyday planning and operations. But working together towards the same goals, we can bring the Next OS and the entire regional plan to life.
As you've heard, our world has changed. Technology is fundamentally reshaping how we move around our region. Sandag's previous plans and project priorities were created under completely different assumptions that were relevant then, but they're not relevant today. We have to shift our mindsets and move in the same direction as these new trends. Otherwise, we'll be investing in systems that will not stand the test of time. Our vision for a faster, fairer, and cleaner region is centered on the fundamental idea that technology can be transformational. There's tremendous opportunity, but there's also tremendous risk if we don't plan to harness these technologies. We can sit back and expect these technological disruptions to organize themselves into a unified, we can't expect them to organize themselves into a unified transportation system. This is why we're working diligently to incorporate technology into the 2021 regional plan. It will give us the tools to not only keep up, but to plan ahead. Technology like mobility as a service can create a future where not everyone needs to own their own car to receive all the benefits and flexibility of the automobile. Autonomous and connected vehicles can help us harness flexible fleets to get people to and from mobility hubs where they can connect to frequent and fast transit that will take them to their destination. And investments in charging stations can vastly expand access to electric vehicles as a clean alternative for all of our vehicles. We have an opportunity to benefit from these innovations, but it will require a lot from us, including thoughtful planning and new investments on a scale we have not done previously. In the past, we've treated technology as something that just happens. This time, we're working with the private sector to build on these technology trends. That's what's so transformational about this plan. And by addressing congestion, social equity, and state and federal mandates, we're making our transportation system safer and healthier for all. That is at the core of the 2021 regional plan. Looking ahead, the global pandemic has shown us that not everyone has access to the technology of today, let alone the innovations of tomorrow. So at our next meeting on April 23rd, we'll be talking about how social equity has been incorporated into the regional plan. We'll go through the social equity analysis and the planning framework that will be used to go forward, ensuring that equity is at the forefront of everything we do. On April 30th, we'll focus on how the regional plan supports your local planning efforts and our shared goals around climate, housing, and mobility. And finally, on May 28th, we'll present the draft 2021 regional plan to you and ask that you release it for public review. After we release the plan this spring, we will release the draft environmental impact report, and we're planning for many opportunities to engage the public this summer to incorporate feedback before we ask you, this board, to consider adoption of the regional plan and certify the environmental impact report this fall. That concludes our presentation for today. The team and I and our panelists look forward to your comments, questions, and input, and I turn it back to you, Chair Blakespear.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I really want to recognize our excellent professional staff as well as the panelists for spending your morning with us and really giving us a peek into what's coming. So that was a great presentation. So I think what we're going to do to manage the time is I'll take board comments and public comments all together or questions, and then we'll turn it to the panel to answer any questions or make any final comments if we have the time remaining. So I'll go to Mayor Minto first.
Thank you. That was certainly the most comprehensive presentation I think I've seen at Sandag, if not the longest, but obviously necessary. I'm going to go through this really quick. So if somebody in staff is writing this down, or I can send it to you later. Some questions I had are, and I think all these are being considered, but I have to ask these questions. How do we fill the current transportation gaps? And of course, what I mean by that is places where streets don't go through now, so we have to go around them. And then it's great hearing about all the electricity, but where's all the power generation coming from for this electrification? And then the affordability for ride share, affordability. Is there an average cost? And then ride shares. We learned here at Sandag that ride shares are failures in the past. People don't go because they don't want to ride with somebody. It takes too long, too many drop-offs. How is that being addressed? And then onboard technologies are promoting inattentive drivers. Nowadays, I hear from all the people, I've even driven with people that if their alarm goes off because they're drifting one way or another, then they make a correction. So I would suggest that the onboard technologies are actually why we had more fatalities and traffic collisions over the last couple of years. And has there been any kind of research to be able to say that actually happened or not? Because I think if we're adding inattention to our drivers because I don't have to worry about where I look anymore. Well, you know what? I'm not going to see a pedestrian in the street, and that's a bad thing because we know pedestrians don't obey any traffic laws generally. They cross when they want, where they want, and how they want. And then when we say share and equity, what does that exactly mean? It sounds like maybe that's the next board meeting. Because I want to know if it means that if I can't afford a car, is somebody else paying for it? Where's that money coming from? And then also, if I don't ride share, if I don't put somebody in my car and I go on the freeway, then I'm being penalized because I have to pay for it. And penalties shouldn't be imposed unless you go to court and are found guilty of some kind of crime. And then also, we mentioned one of the panelists mentioned that China has the top-down approach. Well, from what I understand, that top-down approach really is that, you know, if you don't do what we say, we're going to incarcerate you or kill you. So, I mean, you know, give me a break. Policy has to be more than just a top-down approach and forcing people to do it. Because in this country, we actually have the right to make our own decisions without always being told what to do. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Huebner.
Thank you very much. I've really been looking forward to this particular presentation, and it was excellent. Thank you, Antoinette, for a wonderful white paper, and to our panel. I learned a lot about the opportunities this is presenting, and also some of the obstacles. And it's very clear that we as decision makers have some work to do to get ahead of many of these things. But my question is, how and when, as in what is the timeline when each of these technologies that aren't already in use going to be incorporated into the existing transportation systems and coordinated with each other? And who does that? I mean, how do we monitor and adjust as needed? I'm envisioning like an air traffic control tower. I don't know that that's what it is. I think it's more like that's what the next OS is. But is this being managed in real time or after the fact? And how is this going to be corrected when needed? That's my question.
Okay, thank you. Good questions, and we'll go to the public comments and questions and then go to back to the panel to answer.
Thank you, Chair. First will be Councilmember Dan Quirk, who will be followed by Gretchen Newsom.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for taking my call. I thought it was a fascinating discussion. I have two questions, actually. The first one, are these key technology trends, self-driving technology, ride-hailing, connected car technology, battery electric vehicles, solar energy, are they converging to create a new form of inexpensive, clean, dynamic, and personalized mass transit on the highways and roads? That's the first question. And are we going to do answers now or later?
We're going to do answers all at the end. So go ahead with the rest of your comments or questions if you have more.
Okay. And then the second question is, given these technology trends and the potential for mass transit on the highways, should SANDAG rethink or pause its consideration of spending billions of dollars on fixed line rail as part of the 5 big moves? I think some of the numbers as far as ridership show pretty low results so far. And I'm wondering if that makes sense given all these exciting new technologies coming down the pipe. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Next will be Gretchen Newsom, followed by Carolina Martinez.
Thank you. We were hopeful that some of our other quality of life members could have been called in order, but that's A-okay. Gretchen Newsom speaking on behalf of over 3,500 members of IBW 569 and a member of the Quality Life Coalition. As coalition partners have previously highlighted, advancing equity and climate action, reducing vehicle miles traveled, and creating quality jobs requires policy decisions that shape technology to achieve these desired outcomes. In order to lift up working families and create equitable, high-road jobs for local community members, any technology must be linked with strong labor and workforce standards. Without these strong policies in place, technology can and has led to harmful outcomes for workers and our environment and inequitable access. As the board moves forward to integrate cutting-edge technology into the 5 big moves, we urge you to link these technology choices with the policy framework required to deliver the outcomes that are outlined in our Quality of Life Coalition RTP letter. Thank you.
Thank you, Gretchen. And I apologize. I will go back to the list that you had provided earlier. So David Grubb will be next, followed by B. Mittermiller. David, you can go ahead when you're ready.
Sorry, I'm having trouble getting unmuted. Good morning, Chair Blakespeare and board members. David Grubb, Transportation Chair of Sierra Club San Diego, a member of the Quality of Life Coalition. Our coalition was founded to work with SANDAG to make sure that the regional plan enhances the quality of life for everyone. Past misuse of technology has put us in a situation where there is a very real chance of rendering the earth uninhabitable by humans. There is no reason to believe that continued misuse of technology will get us out of that situation. Burning fossil fuels to power our homes, factories, and automobiles created and shaped the modern world, but it now threatens to destroy it. We must move quickly to end our reliance on fossil fuels to preserve our quality of life. The burden is on you as SANDAG board members and your colleagues at every level of government to take control of technology to make sure that it is used in a way that serves the public interest. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And next is B. Mittermiller.
Thank you. Good morning, board members. I'm B. Mittermiller with San Diego 350 and also a member of the Quality of Life Coalition, Vision Zero, and the San Diego Transportation Equity Working Group. The pandemic exposed and heightened the deep inequities in broadband access. Digital inequities are tied to other deep-rooted structural barriers that limit fair and just opportunities for health, wealth, and advancement. SANDAG collected data during the pandemic which quantified the inequitable impacts of the digital divide. The technology component in the RTP must ensure that communities of concern have affordable access, as well as a user-friendly interface that clearly communicates information for all travelers. I'm encouraged by SANDAG's planned development of a regional digital equity strategy and action plan and look forward to its implementation. SANDAG's intention to seize the opportunity to make high-quality broadband services available to everyone in the region, regardless of income, is absolutely necessary. As stated in the supporting documents, this level of connectivity allows more people to benefit from online work, learning, remote services, and app-enabled trip planning and transportation services. In addition, fast and efficient transit and flexible fleets would enhance mobility for all, including seniors, low-income people, the disabled, and those without access to a privately owned vehicle. I expect to see these goals achieved. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We have 4 remaining public speakers. Next will be Noah, followed by Deborah Knight. And if Deborah, you could please raise your hand while Noah is speaking so that we can find you and help unmute your mic. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair and Board. This is Noah Harris with Climate Action Campaign and a member of the Quality of Life Coalition. I want to start by echoing Dee's point and emphasize that all technologies included in the 2021 Regional Plan must be equitably accessible while also serving the purpose of reducing air pollution, reducing vehicle miles traveled, and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Transportation accounts for more emissions than any other sector in the San Diego region. The climate emergency is here. We already experience devastating wildfires, droughts, floods, and the consequences of sea level rise every year. What's more, we know that the climate crisis and environmental injustices have and will hit communities of concern first and worst, even though these are the communities least likely to contribute to climate change. A world-class transit system with aggressive VMT reduction in conjunction with electric vehicle adoption is essential to stopping the climate crisis. Our coalition is advocating for an RTP that exceeds our state-mandated emissions reduction target, which is achievable with the necessary technologies to maximize mode shift towards sustainable modes of travel. Thank you.
Thank you, Noah. Next is Deborah Knight, who will be followed by Carolina Martinez.
Hello, my name is Deborah Knight. Am I on?
Yes, ma'am, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I'm the Executive Director of Friends of Rose Canyon, and we are members of the Quality of Life Coalition. Technology should not be used to support highway widening projects for HOV lanes that may in fact do little to reduce VMT or greenhouse gas emissions. To implement technology, SANDAG should instead convert existing lanes to HOV lanes. 2 reasons not to add HOV lanes by further widening highways. First, HOV lanes have been found to contribute to sprawl by reducing congestion, thus offsetting the reduction in energy consumption that they might offer. Second is the widely recognized issue of induced demand, which is an increase in driving that results from adding road capacity. A recent Caltrans report on greenhouse gas emissions found that induced demand can often lead to an increase in VMT and greenhouse gas emissions when highway capacity is expanded, including through the addition of HOV and express lanes. An example of this issue is the 805 North project, where Sandag should implement new technology and HOV lanes by using existing road capacity rather than further widening the highway. This will also protect the surrounding core MSCP habitat and wildlife corridor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next will be Carolina, followed by Jesse O'Sullivan.
Hi, good morning. My name is Carolina with the Environmental Health Coalition. I'm also representing the San Diego Transportation Equity Working Group. We want to show our appreciation for all for the panel and all the content that's been presented. We really value all the work that's happening behind the Regional Transportation Plan. We are here to ask that the plan ensures to include mechanisms to accelerate the transition to electric buses, particularly in environmental justice communities. As we all know, reducing the gases that are warming up the planet is of immediate priority, particularly for low-income communities of color that are at the front lines of the climate crisis. Unfortunately, we also know that the region is being challenged because of the lack of infrastructure in the implementation of its transition of the bus system to electric vehicles. And so we want to make sure that the Regional Transportation Plan provides immediate solutions for that transition to be accelerated. We cannot wait till 2040 for that to happen. We need to see those buses in our communities and in the region by 2030. Thank you.
Thank you. And our final speaker will be Jesse O'Sullivan.
Hi, this is Jesse O'Sullivan with Circulate San Diego. First, I want to thank the presenters and panelists. There's a lot of good information in there. It's great that Sandag's keeping an eye on new and developing technologies, and I'm sure that some of these technologies are going to have a big impact on the way people move in the future. But it's also true that there's a lot that Sandag can do with the data and technology that exist right now. Right now, Sandag can save lives by adopting Vision Zero. Right now, Sandag can create bus lanes and bike lanes that reduce greenhouse gas emissions. This is not to say that new technologies are bad. New technologies are good. But no matter what the technologies are, there are always going to be hard choices to make in order to create safe, environmentally friendly transportation systems. I would ask the board to make sure that in addition to seeking out new technologies, you remain focused on what we can do here and now.
Jesse, did you have additional comments or?
No, sorry. Thank you.
Oh,
That's
okay.
it.
Sorry, I wasn't sure if you dropped out. Okay, Chair, that concludes the comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we've had a number of different questions and comments, and I would like to ask staff to respond to those.
Chair Blakespear, I am going to turn this over to Sanjeev and the panel. I think I want to take full advantage of them being here. And so panelists, as you're coming up, I think first we'll start with a question from Mayor Huebner about just timing and how this all gets coordinated. And then we also heard from Mayor Mento, just a number of different questions. And if you want to respond to that, so I'll turn it over to the group.
Yeah, so I'll just speak for a moment first, then ask the panel to respond. So from my perspective, the technology, the way we are presenting the technology is happening as Ray started off by kicking us off in the beginning. And as having worked in technology for 25, 30 years, making things happen, that's our goal in private industry. We move technology forward, and it's up to having moved to Sandag now, renewed understanding of that basically there's a potential for us to put in a kind of an outcome-based regulatory framework that makes sure that how technology gets deployed, lets us achieve our public goals of equitable access and sustainability and so on and so forth. So that's the charter to Sandag and the region as to how to make the technologies that are coming work for us. And so that brings me to the panel, and we can see projections of when these technologies will come to be, and what policies we need to put in place so we achieve our goals both on the public side and on the private side. So I'll let anyone jump in first. All right, just
happy to start here. So I was going to say thanks for the question, and I think it's a very important question to ask. A lot of the emerging technologies, some of it is here now, as a lot of folks have already recognized, and some of it is evolving and literally coming down the pike, rapidly speaking. At Forward, our approach is really one, to have a collaborative relationship with municipalities as well as with other business partners to really understand how the technology can be used to improve mobility. I think when we think of just technology for the sake of technology, essentially we want to make sure that it's actually connected to human beings and really making sure that their mobility needs are met. Specifically, and I can think, for example, scooters, 3 years ago, scooters were this unknown concept, and I'm sure a lot of folks didn't expect scooters to take off the way that they did. We've also been seeing scooters evolve to e-bikes and a lot of different other more recreational and active forms of mobility taking place. So I think this is something that is literally emerging in real time, but it is very important to have a collaborative relationship with the business community to really understand where the technology is going, but at the same time, really asking the questions on both ends. Really, what's our mobility priorities for the city, and also what are some of the mobility priorities or transportation and technology priorities on the behalf of municipalities and business.
Build up on top of what Justine mentioned. Maybe just to build up on top of what Justine mentioned. Look, I think, as technology transforms the next generation transportation network, the next generation vehicle, I think it is very important to be able to bring multiple stakeholders together to address, I fully agree with Sanjeev's comment, an outcome-based initiative. And I think social inequity is one aspect. I think safety and being able to make vehicles in our streets safer is another one. And we would welcome the opportunity to work much more closely with SANDAG and a variety of public and private stakeholders to figure out what are the specific steps that are needed so that we create a blueprint, we create a roadmap to be able to accomplish what is possible in the short term, because we do believe that a lot of the technologies needed to make this happen are already here.
Alice, do you have anything to add? We can't hear you, Talis.
So we know that electric vehicles are already here, and you already have some electric buses driving in San Diego. The challenge with respect to timeframes is making sure that you plan correctly. And that's why it's great that you have such incredibly talented and thoughtful people putting together this plan. There's a challenge in terms of supply of like electric buses because lots of transit agencies want them. So you're going to have to plan in terms of being able to buy them and coming in. You're very fortunate to be in San Diego because you don't have some of the range problems that other cities have in terms of dealing with turning on heaters in the winter, turning on air conditioning in the summer that really decreases the range and has some problems with that. But as you think about adding lots of electric buses, you have to upgrade the charging infrastructure. And the cost for building out the utility side of that is expensive, and you don't want to do it multiple times. You want to have a clear plan of the different pieces you're bringing in. So what does it mean as you're electrifying the port areas? What does it mean as you're electrifying the board areas? And how do you tie that in with the electric buses and everything else so you can have a clear plan and make sure that you invest wisely the public dollars?
Right, exactly, precisely. Technology is coming, and we have a heads up right now to plan for this. And so, another question that we heard was about whether these autonomous vehicles will form some sort of a highway transit system and so on. And those technologies are coming as well. I think what my view is, and we're working closely at Sandag, the entire team, on, and that's why we introduced this idea called the Next OS. And so basically, all these technologies are coming, and we need to figure out a way of how they are integrated to produce this this kind of integrated transit system. So there's a role in this for autonomous driving. There's a role for connected vehicles. There's a role for shared mobility, and as well there's the role for transit, because transit eventually is the most efficient way of moving lots of people with the most efficiently and most sustainable way. There's also these discussions about how the street and the smart infrastructure will contribute to sustainable transportation. So it's about integration more than anything else. We will not be able to choose one or the other. Colleen, that's sort of, from my best recollection, that's the questions that I collected, but there may be others that I'm missing.
Thank you, Sanjeev, and thank you to the panelists. I know we committed to the board that we would try to wrap this item up by 11:15. So I think some of the other questions that were raised, we can respond to individually with board members, but I'll turn it back to you, Chair.
Okay. Well, thank you again. That was really interesting, and I really appreciate all the energy and effort that went into that. So now we will move to our next item, which is item number 8. And we had a question about the placement of this on our agenda. So I wanted to go to our attorney, John Kirk, if you could address that.
Yes, I'd be happy to, Madam Chair. So you have procedures for placing items on the agenda, and those are primarily set forth in Board Policy 1. Under that, the Executive Committee has the authority to set the agenda for the board. And that also provides that any member that wants to have an item considered for inclusion on an agenda to make that request to the chair of the board prior to the Executive Committee's consideration of an agenda. Your board policies also provide that once the Executive Committee approves an agenda, that's also subject to your ratification as the board. Board Policy 17 then addresses issues that come up after the Executive Committee has approved the agenda, and it allows for modification of the board's agenda after it has been approved by the Executive Committee upon concurrence of the board chair and the executive director. Now, applying those rules to this item that's before you, today's board agenda was approved by the Executive Committee at its March 12th meeting. After that meeting, at the board meeting that happened after that the same day, Councilmember Hsu requested that a resolution regarding certain topics be considered in the regional plan, be brought before the board for consideration. And that's the item that is now before you. The chair approved adding that item to the agenda later that day. So based upon the timing of when this issue was raised and its subsequent approval by leadership, it's my opinion that this process is consistent with your procedures as they're set out in Board Policies 1 and 17. And I'll note that your procedures are not inconsistent with many member jurisdictions, with many of them conferring authority on the mayor or council president to manage the agenda and even to unilaterally add items to the agenda.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to go to Councilmember Jack Hsu, and then we'll come back to public comments from Mayor Jones and others after his comments. So go ahead, Mayor or Councilmember Hsu.
Hello, thank you. First, I want to show my T-shirt. I'm often outclassed by the beautiful women and how well they're dressed at Sandag board meetings, as well as the handsome men with well-dressed suits. So I had to wear a T-shirt today. I was going to save this T-shirt, which says "It is an honor to be Asian," quote by Ms. Ho, Sandra Ho, but I felt that before I could do so in May for Asian Month, that it's appropriate to do it now in what is happening throughout our country. In any case, I wanted to make some introductory statements with regards to this resolution. First, I'd like to dedicate this resolution to Senator Jim Mills, who rode his bicycle down the coast of California in the 70s to promote the Coastal Commission, who told me about the tunnels that we need to put into the Lausanne corridor over 20 years ago. So this resolution is for Jim. This resolution addresses a number of issues. It is consistent with our equity statement. It is going to address health and environmental justice. It's going to deal with our economy, help our economy, and economic justice. It's going to give us a greenhouse gas reduction goal, which is actually, if we prorate it, less than what we need to do by 2035. It's going to address habitat preservation and promote good land use policies and hopefully stop urban sprawl. And it's also going to protect our workers. And I want to make a particular point of what it does with PLAs, project labor agreements. With regards to project labor agreements, this resolution does not preclude all state authorized apprenticeship programs. And as we move forward on more specific implementation plans for project labor agreements and how we move forward with these large projects, it can and will get input from groups like the Black Contractors Associations, as well as other contractors. The tone of this resolution is to be inclusive, that we don't leave people out. And that's the tone that I think we want to go forward with. And the communities and all of our stakeholders and folks that are interested in what SANDAG is doing for all of our communities should know that SANDAG is in a position to be inclusive. We are going to be inclusive as we go forward on this RTP. We do not have the room to name everybody in a resolution that is only 2 pages long. And I think that's the main point. I'd like to move for the adoption of this resolution after we hear public comments and other comments, of course, board members and from staff. Lastly, I want to also point out that this resolution has been reviewed by the SANDAG staff and by legal counsel. And I really appreciate the help I have received from the staff and the close attention by the legal counsel to make sure that this resolution is safe to pass, that it is achievable, and that we're going to be in a better place in our region with this resolution to help guide the next regional transportation plan. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to recognize that as a motion instead of coming back to you for the motion. So now I will go to the hands raised. Mayor Jones.
Thank you very much, Chair Blakespear. This action today does not represent the cities and the county to set our own agenda. There are 18 agencies plus the county, so 19 total, that all need a voice at this table. So the fact that this is happening and our director has actually set our agenda, taking away the representation from our member agencies and stealing our ability to truly represent our citizens is very concerning. But I further have issues with this agenda item because it is not equitable. It is not clearly stated that state and federal ABC shop apprentice programs would be also part of this. And standard PLAs shut out these apprentices. I've heard from both the Black Contractors Association and the Associated General Contractors. They want their voices to be heard. They want to have their consideration in their voice, and they have not had any opportunity to do this. This is unacceptable. We must include all local workers.
And I'm sure all of you have gotten the same emails that I have, and that is so many of them asking for their voices to be heard. So I'd like to make a motion to allow vital community voices and stakeholders that will be directly affected by this action, including the Black Contractors Association and ABC, as I previously mentioned, that I had actually spoken to them, to be heard and provide important development in an augmented resolution serving all of San Diego County residents and workers. I'd like this to follow our usual process of both planning and transportation committees, seeing this resolution and providing important feedback by all of us reaching out directly to the affected stakeholders for a transparent process. We've already spoken so many times previously about Sandag having a reputation of not listening to the communities and not having a transparent process. I think this is vital to our communities. So that being said, I think that this should be a very transparent process, as I had said. Prior to these committees forwarding to their recommendations to the board of directors, I'd like to see all of the stakeholders that would be directly impacted by this decision of the PLA specifically discussion, that we would have their feedback prior to the transportation and the planning agency committees, and that we would try to get this done no later than the end, by the end of June, but no later than the end of July. And this would be important for the input and the participation of such an important decision for all of our county workers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Lawson Remer.
Second or motion.
Well, I think
yeah, thank you very much. I very much appreciate this resolution that's been brought forward. I want to thank Councilmember Shu and Sandag staff for all their work on this. As a statement of principles, this fairly represents my principles: sustainability, biodiversity, equity, and shared prosperity. I think, and I know I share these values with many of my colleagues, and I certainly know these values represent the vast majority of San Diegans. I think this resolution is the future and the San Diego I want my daughter to live in. So I'm here for it, and I'll be voting in favor of Councilmember Shu's resolution.
Okay, thank you. And before I'm calling the next two hands, I just want to clarify where we are with the motion. So Councilmember Shu, do you want to withdraw your motion at this point because you haven't received a second? And Mayor Jones has her motion, and then I think it was Mayor Hall who seconded.
For efficiency, it may be easier for us to deal with Mayor Jones' proposed resolution, or proposed motion rather, and then we'll come back to item 8.
Okay, so Mayor Jones has a motion and it's seconded by Mayor Hall. I think that was the voice I heard. And then from there, we have a motion on the table. So that means that procedurally other things can proceed. So next we have Mayor Wells.
Hi, thank you for recognizing me. I have concerns about project labor agreements since they often disadvantage contractors and workers from El Cajon. One major issue is they often require benefits to be paid into the union funds, and then the workers don't get the money because of union vesting rules. For example, if an equipment operator works on a public works job, they get around $10 an hour under prevailing wage. If they work on a road or trolley project for a year, they can earn $20,000 towards retirement. If the project is under a PLA, that money gets kept by the unions since they set the vesting rules for their pension funds, and typically it takes 4 to 5 years of continuous employment to get vested and to keep that money. In El Cajon, we have a constant fight against wage theft, and Sandag should ensure that we aren't hurting workers by taking from the pension funds. While I don't support project labor agreements, I would support parameters in this resolution to guarantee that workers keep all of their earned pension compensation. I propose we amend this item to say, quote, project labor agreements that guarantee workers receive their full compensation owed to them under prevailing wage, despite vesting or other rules. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Gustavo Delarda from Caltrans.
Thank you, Chair Blakespear, members of the board. I wanted to offer a couple of comments regarding the resolution. The first one is that when I'm reading it under the whereas number 10, I read that it talks about whereas an effective plan for all forms of transportation should consider safe and comfortable bike and pedestrian infrastructure, especially near transit stops and hubs. So when I read that whereas, and then I read the 8 points where the board is directing staff to consider for the regional transportation plan, I do not see any follow-up on that statement. So, and in view of all the comments that we've been receiving regarding Vision Zero on this meeting, and I know we're going to be talking about it in future meetings, I would perhaps suggest that in those 8 points, or perhaps some language is added that talks about that staff consider the implementation of Vision Zero, particularly for our most vulnerable users that are bikes and pedestrians, which represent 30% of the fatalities on our transportation system, both local and state highway system. So I think that was the first point that I wanted to bring up for your consideration, Councilmember Chu, as well as the rest of the board. The second point that I wanted to bring up is that, as we all know, extreme weather events are already here, with a large number of wildfires that we've been seeing across the state, both in size and numbers of wildfires. And I would suggest perhaps that also part of the direction to staff is to consider the needs of our rural communities, and particularly our Native American communities that live in those rural communities and are disproportionately affected by these extreme weather events and rely on the transportation system for evacuation. I know that this would be consistent with what staff is already doing as part of the 5 big moves, considering the issue, the threat of wildfires and evacuations for rural communities during those extreme events. So I know that staff is already looking at it as part of the 5 big moves, and particularly as part of the complete corridors. I did not see it in the resolution, so I wanted to offer that as well for your consideration. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Sotelo Solis.
Buenos dias, everyone. And I have to say that I'm very supportive of Councilmember Chu's resolution. And, you know, I want to remind my colleagues that we are the representatives of our 18 respective jurisdictions. And that's why we come together to have this dialogue. Will we always see eye to eye? No. But times are changing, and we want to see workers be protected. The rights of those that are in the workplace to have the best wages, to have the projects pencil out as best as possible, as well as us as the municipalities and partners have the best bang for our buck. And it's working hand in hand with those developers and those partners. And I think the language in the resolution as placed by Councilmember Chu allows for that. And so one thing that I did want to just bring out was in the whereas where it says project labor agreements help create career pathways for a skilled and trained workforce. Joint labor project apprenticeships promote labor stability, and provide for a diverse local workforce, which helps our local economy. This is huge, especially when we're talking about the challenges that our region has faced because of COVID-19. This is a place where we can put our flag and say, this is where we're going to succeed. This is how we are going to move forward with, again, language as part of this resolution. Again, we can always revisit, but the reality is we need to show that we're not just about, hey, let's make an equity statement and we stand by it. This is policy in action, and we have measure points where we can move forward. And so with that, Chair, I know that there is a motion on the floor by Mayor Jones. I would like to do a substitute motion that we move forward with resolution language on item 8. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We have a motion
Second.
and we have a second from Mayor Gloria. And so now we'll continue with board comments. Mayor Vasquez.
Thank you so very much. I actually have a few questions for clarification here. I hear lots of words shared about this particular agenda item, but also I've heard some concerns. And some of the concerns are that perhaps some may be left out. Now, this is what I do know. It is our obligation to support the equity statement that we created. And the question is, does this support the equity statement? There are some folks out there who feel as though, you know, perhaps state authorized apprenticeship programs will be missed or left out. And so I'd like to get some clarity on whether or not they will be left out. And so if I could get that information, that would be great.
Okay. Does staff want to respond to that question?
Yes, we would be more than happy to get that information. This is just the beginning, I think, of a process to get direction from the board to understand what are the policies and procedures that should be taking place while we adopt the RTP. So as we continue these conversations, we'll be bringing back components of this, and we can, you know, talk about the specifics and what you would like to see in a PLA and how it affects the San Diego region and the workforce.
Yes, I think that the one thing that really speaks to the heart of some people, it's the word unilateral, but also ensuring that, you know, these state authorized, state approved programs are not missed. By all means, we don't want to exclude anybody, but we want to give everybody an equal and fair share, you know, an equal and fair opportunity to compete when it comes to working jobs throughout San Diego. So I just wanted to get some clarity on that because the word that really, really speaks to the hearts of people, it's unilateral. And we just want to make sure that that's not missed.
Sure, we will make sure that you're part of that conversation as this conversation evolves.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have 2 more board hands up. I'm going to call on both of them, and then we'll go to our 8 public comments before we call on other board members or go to the vote. So Mayor Gasterland.
Thank you, Chair. I want to simply echo Gustavo Gallardo's comments and say I fully support them. And also my fellow mayor from Lemon Grove, the comments I just heard. And I have 2 remarks. First is my thanks to board member Jack Hsu for bringing this forward. This is a true first step in implementing policy that takes our equity statement and makes it a reality. My second comment is I too saw many, many voices attempting to talk to us through emails. And at some point, those voices do become a blur because there's so very many, but the message was clear and the message was consistent. And that was hesitation over one phrase in point 7 under the now therefore be it resolved. Local workforce and careers in construction for our region through project labor agreements. I fully agree with the rest of it, and I hear the voices on number 7, and I would recommend and request an amendment. Perhaps board member Chu would be willing to, for now, until it can be determined whether it's inclusive, exclusive, or leaving out those who are not part of labor unions, but simply delete through project labor agreements and make that a modified. If that needs to be a third substitute motion on top of the current substitute motion, I'd rather make it a friendly motion on top of, I believe it was Mayor Sotelo Solis who made the substitute motion. So that would be a friendly amendment.
Hi, Chair. I know that Chair, if I could, I know that there was a request for a friendly amendment. At this time, I would like to move forward with the language as is. Again, we can always revisit at a different point in time. I think we need to move forward with the language as is. And again, we can modify it at a different point in time. I see Mayor Gasolin's point, same thing with Mayor Vasquez, but I think we can really work through those, and whether it be the Black Contractors Association or any other entity, the women's the contractors, whoever X is that has or feels that they're excluded. I think this is meant to be as inclusive as possible. So at this point, I appreciate the friendly amendment, but I'd like to go with the language as is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to call on Mayor Voss, and then we'll go Mayor Wells on round 2 with board comments after the public comments. We now have 10 public comments. So go ahead, Mayor Voss.
Thank you, Chair. I would just say, what's the rush? Why not go through a more deliberative process, get the stakeholders involved, and let's get something that hopefully we can all get behind. But right now, I feel like we're cramming this through, and there's no need to do it. I would highly recommend, let's just slow down, have a more deliberative process, and aim for something that the board can get behind unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to public comment and then go to Mayor Wells and Mayor Bailey after that. So go ahead, public comment.
Thank you, Chair. We have a total of 13 hands up now. The first is Gretchen Newsom, who will be followed by Lori Saldana.
Thank you. I ask that you please refer to the submitted letter from the members of the Quality of Life Coalition, representing tens of thousands of families, residents, and workers throughout the region, advocating for an equitable, safe, and healthy transportation system. We have collectively written to express our strong support for this agenda item, and we urge you to vote yes in unanimous support of this resolution, as it will help our region achieve a transportation future that is best for climate, environmental justice, air quality, mobility choices, and high-quality jobs. Rather than having each of us call in, I'll read off the organizations that have signed on in support of the resolution, thereby saving us a lot of time. That includes IBW 569, Environmental Center of San Diego, Grow the San Diego Way, Preserve Calavera, Unite Here Local 30, Southwest Wetlands Interpretive Association, Friends of Rose Creek, San Diego County Bicycle Coalition, San Diego Coast Keeper, AFT 1931, Mid-City CAN, City Heights CDC, San Diego 350, Sierra Club San Diego, Hammond Climate Solutions, Coastal Environmental Rights Foundation, aka SURF, Beautiful PB, Climate Action Campaign, the Surfrider Foundation of San Diego County, Environmental Health Coalition, and Bike San Diego. Thank you, and we hope to have your full support today for this resolution.
Thank you, Gretchen. Next is Lori Saldana, followed by Shane Harris.
Good morning, and thank you for taking up this issue. I spoke earlier as a retired state assembly member, but many years before that, I was a union carpenter here in San Diego, and I built many structures that are still in use, including the Pacific Beach Post Office. And as a woman and as a Latina, I will tell you that building trades are not reflective of our diverse communities. They weren't many years ago when I was a carpenter, and sadly they continue to be, they have a lack of diversity in many ways. The reason we have disadvantaged communities, as are mentioned in the resolution, is because of a history of systemic racism in the building trades. And it is being addressed, and it is improving, but the historic impact of that on these communities in San Diego continues. So I am asking for the members of SANDAG board to go back and review your own equity policies before voting on this measure today. And unless it is consistent, then ask for a continuance, delay a vote on this issue. The sad reality in San Diego is we do not have a good equity when it comes to public contracting, that historically women and contractors from the Black and Latino and other communities have not received their full allotment of contracts at both the blue collar, white collar, professional level. And Sandag has an opportunity to address that, but simply putting in project labor agreements for career pathways and talking about promoting labor stability in a diverse workforce without clear language and direction on partnering with the Black Contractors Association and other groups that support members of those disadvantaged communities, it simply will not work unless we have very clear direction and language in this resolution. So I just want to acknowledge Councilmember Shu for his work on this. However, I don't think it goes far enough. And for Supervisor Lawson Remer, at your board meeting earlier this week, you voted to delay a similar approach on tribal issues because you wanted it to go back to the community for more work. Please, Supervisor Lawson Remer, do the same today. Don't push forward a resolution without checking in with those disadvantaged communities that have a right to be participating in these types of activities and contracts, and make sure that their voices are heard. So again, speaking as someone who has been a labor member and has worked on big projects, the diversity is not there. Historically, it hasn't been. Please, it's time to do better. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Shane Harris, who will be followed by Craig Jones.
Hello, good morning or almost good afternoon to the chair and to the Sandag board. First and foremost, I would like to begin by thanking the work of Councilmember Shu to bring forth this resolution, which is very bright in so many other ways. I'm very concerned about a couple clauses in there, and I'll talk about that in a second. I want to thank all the groups who have come together to work on this resolution. And really, the 2021 regional plan is a foundation. You know, this resolution is a foundation for the regional plan. The regional plan is important because it gives direction to what the future looks like in our region when it comes to transportation, when it comes to workforce equity, when it comes to work, all of these various issues. The concern I have is that many of you have noted that this is equitable. And I would challenge that perspective. Many of you, after the killing of George Floyd last year, said Black Lives Matter. You said we want to stand up, hashtag BLM. You said you're an ally of our community. Yet and still, you have a resolution that has been brought forth here without the input of the only state and federal approved Black apprenticeship program in our region. You have brought forth this resolution without input from them. And on top of that, the only organization that represents African-American construction apprenticeship workers and contractors in our region. So here's my request. It's very clear, according to Mayor of National City, who has talked about Black Lives Matter so many times. All of you will be on record. And the reason why I'm here today is because I want to make sure it's on record, that it's not forgotten. That when you brought forth this resolution, you said, oh, Black lives will matter later. We'll talk about it later. We'll bring them to the table later. Maybe we'll be inclusive later. Maybe we'll be equitable later. No, there's no time for later. I'm calling on you today to bring forth an amendment in number 7 of the I believe the now therefore clause, where it says local workforce and careers in construction for our region through project labor agreements. It should add and inclusive of all state approved apprenticeship programs, which would include the Black Contractors Association, who has been left out of this process. It is critical that if we're going to talk about we care about Black lives, that we care about equity, we have to do it in a resolution where the foundation will be built upon a regional plan that should be equitable and bring all voices to the table and bring a consensus of leadership, to the table. The unions have not done the best job at that equity, yet they tout it all the time. And I'm calling on us to actually stand on what we believe in. If you don't believe Black Lives Matter, then just say that. But don't have a liberal kind of racism that is mixed in with some energy that is not real. I'm calling
Mr.
on
Griff, I
a
apologize. I do need to stop you there. Your time has expired and we have several people waiting after you, but thank you for your comments. Next will be Craig Jones, followed by Eric Kristen. And just to let the public members know, we do have 12 hands raised currently. That's all the public comments we'll have time for today, so the public comment period will close after that. Thank you. And Craig, you can go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Shane Harris is a hard act to follow, but I will try. Not to make things more complicated. Well, let me first explain. I am a member of SD 350 and a representative to Sandag's Social Equity Committee. And as such, I do generally support the resolution which is on the agenda today. Not to make things more complex, I wanted to suggest a slight modification of language. It would be for provision number 8, such that it would read biodiversity, natural habitats, open space, and other natural and cultural resources through effective land use planning. That eliminates land use sprawl and supports regional habitat conservation programs such as the MSCP, MHCP, and their supporting land use plans and zoning. It would add language that eliminates land use sprawl. The reason for this is that I respect this resolution as it establishes a general set of principles for moving forward for Sandag and for our region. Land use sprawl is, from a conservative point of view, inherently inefficient and costly for all of the public jurisdictions in our region. Sprawl costs more money to maintain and support over time. Land use sprawl is inherently racist in that we've all know the term white flight. Sprawl is white flight, and it has created the inequity that we see in our region today. And finally, if we have a hope of being able to control greenhouse gas emissions and effectively address climate change, we need to eliminate land use sprawl in our region. That's the reason that I suggest this change in language. And again, generally otherwise, I'm very supportive of the resolution. Thank you very much. Appreciate your consideration.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Eric Kristen, who will be followed by Brad Barnum.
Thank you very much. Board members, my name is Eric Kristen. I'm the Executive Director of the Poway-based Coalition for Fair Employment and Construction. Ours is the organization that has brought multiple fair and open competition ordinances to entities around San Diego, including all of San Diego County, all of which passed overwhelmingly, banning discriminatory and divisive and exclusionary agreements like project labor agreements. For instance, in San Diego County, after the voters had over $1 million spent educating them on what PLAs were, they voted 76 to 24% to ban project labor agreements. I couldn't get 76% of you to agree what the weather is like outside today. But on the issue of project labor agreements, they were quite clear. They were opposed to them. In the city of San Diego, 58% voted against project labor agreements and in favor of fair and open competition. Again, just numbers you simply don't see, especially after having more than $2 million spent by proponents and opponents of Proposition A. Project labor agreements are divisive for a very good reason. They force the 90% of the local construction workforce, that's the Bureau of Labor Statistics, 90% of the local construction workforce, trained, valued workers, diverse workers, wake up on a daily basis and choose to work in a union-free environment. That's their choice. They make excellent pay. It's one of the best paying jobs that you will find in the region and in the country. And that is the reality. The minority that has brought this at the last minute and had this added, for the most part, the wording is fine. But the wording that says that only joint labor management apprenticeship programs, it's very specific. It's not something that needs to be fixed later, as Mayor Solis is trying to do. It's something that needs to be fixed now. All state-approved apprenticeship programs and young men and women in those apprenticeship programs need to feel like they are part of your vision. That's something that can simply be changed right now in the verbiage and by adding all state-approved apprenticeship programs, all highly trained men and women, you will show that you are truly being inclusive and not exclusive to the minority in the construction trades that want to exclude the rest of us. My members build the finest projects on earth. They want to be part of this. You need to have everyone rowing in the same direction in the future when you need the funding that you need to achieve your vision. If something like a project labor agreement or the language there within is included, you will have just the opposite. You will have people openly working against any attempt to seek further funding. So the vision statement in and of itself is fine, but the specific two provisions that mention project labor agreements, and more importantly, only single out joint labor management apprenticeship programs, are exclusionary, discriminatory, and have been rejected overwhelmingly by local voters. Please change that. We'd love to be in support of this, not in opposition down the road when you're seeking funding. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next will be Brad Barnum, followed by Asia Hamid.
Thank you, Madam Chair, board members. Brad Barnum with the Associated General Contractors. We have provided you a letter on this issue, but I did want to add another perspective. We understand this resolution doesn't mandate the contents of the regional plan, but is likely going to affect the campaign to pass a funding measure, which is still 19 months away. A little history, AGC was involved in the successful 2004 Transnet extension. There was a solid support on the Transnet board for a balanced transportation system, and stakeholders were involved early and often throughout the one-year campaign. As a result, 67% of voters supported Proposition A. 2016 was a completely different story. Some of you were on that board. There was a splintered board, and stakeholders were never, ever given a chance to effectively engage in a much shorter campaign. It failed as only 58% of voters supported Measure A. Now here we are, a resolution brought forward with no stakeholder input that is problematic for the construction industry and against what voters supported in 2010. 76% of voters supported fair and open competition in the county. And as you've heard from some of the board members today, we ask that you take a pause on this, meet with stakeholders, including the AGC, BCA, and the building trades, and discuss effective ways to build career pathways and a diverse local workforce. If you don't, and this resolution passes, you may see campaign issues similar to 2016. AGC doesn't want that repeated. We do support infrastructure investment. We always have with you at Sandag. But your policy priorities, if they go south on this issue, there could be problems in the campaign in 2016. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next is Asia Hamid, followed by Dustin Steiner.
Hi. The resolution on number 8 regarding PLAs to be amended to include unilateral apprenticeship committee programs like the BCA's American Apprenticeship Program do not include the Black Contractors Association. We can't start a policy of exclusion while saying that we support race and equity and inclusion, while we actually support systemic racism. We have the right to exist. Black Contractors Association apprenticeship matters because Black lives matter. So I believe that this resolution on item number 8 needs to be amended.
Thank you very much. Next is Dustin Steiner, followed by Tom Lemon.
Good afternoon, board members. My name is Dustin Steiner, and I'm calling on behalf of over 800 union and non-union members of the Associated General Contractors of San Diego. Our membership has been building San Diego for almost 100 years and looks forward to building our future. The AGC supports a balanced approach to improving the county's transportation infrastructure that allows all San Diego workers to participate. Sandag's construction program has a great track record of completing projects on time and on budget. Apprentices from all programs are on job sites. Local contractors are participating on the projects, and craft workers are coming from all over San Diego County. We have concerns with the PLA language in the resolution that could disrupt this success. A longer debate about the cost and benefits of PLAs should be had by this board, and we are aware that this resolution is the beginning and not the end of the PLA discussion. However, as drafted, this resolution directs staff to consider only a PLA that is joint labor management, which means union only. That shuts out open shop apprenticeship programs like AGC, Black Contractors Association, ABC, and WICA, state-approved programs with highly skilled workers that will be crucial to completing Sandag's bold vision. In short, the Sandag staff is being directed to bring back a union-only PLA or no PLA at all. Our request is to remove all references of a PLA in this resolution because they limit this board's options going forward. Instead, have a stakeholders meeting on the subject and bring back an agreement that has more support. The AGC looks forward to working with this board and Sandag staff to ensure the projects in the 2021 regional plan are delivered in an equitable and inclusive way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Tom Lemon, followed by Mike Bullock.
Hey, good afternoon. Tom Lemon with the San Diego Building and Construction Trades Council, representing 30,000 local community construction workers in support of Council Member Shu's original motion, and appreciate National City Mayor Solis's follow-up motion. One of the values of the resolutions is the use of PLAs and the Joint Labor Management Apprenticeship Program. These programs are the gold standard of apprenticeships, where workers have a voice and joint partnership with their contractors. I want to throw some numbers at you, but I want you to think about some of the previous testimony and remember, by their own admission, the building trades is 15% of the construction industry, but yet 92% of all apprentices that graduate come out of joint labor management apprenticeship programs. 68% of our current apprentices today are people of color. 96% of all women come out of joint labor, that graduate come out of joint labor management apprenticeship programs. 96% of people of color who graduate apprenticeship programs come out of joint labor management apprenticeship programs. Now just do the math, we're 15% and graduating nearly 100% of folks who actually successfully complete an apprenticeship program. Now I want to throw some amazing, astonishing numbers at you. In California alone, we spend $100 million a year through our joint labor management programs. And nationally, nobody spends more on workforce training, and we're talking about all the institutions, everything except for the US military, than the National Building Trades Joint Labor Management Apprenticeship Programs at $1.7 billion nationally. We believe that these programs are the gold standard, and absolutely, if you want results and you want to change the paradigm, you need to really take a serious look at what we provide. I really want to thank you for the time, and I hope that the resolution moves forward unmolested. Thank you.
Thank you. Next will be Mike Bullock, followed by Eddie Strecco.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you. This is Mike Bullock. I live up in Oceanside, and I appreciate all these comments. I generally support this resolution. You may want to change 7 and 8. I think there have been some important comments and discussion there. I'd like to point out, it really just says that you will direct your staff to consider the following. So there's a limitation on what this does, but it's still an important discussion. And I want to focus on some different items here. Number 3 is important: consistency with local climate action plans. I think the statement needs to be made, and I think we need to understand that climate action plans locally that I know of are not meaningful in terms of reducing driving. And cars are the biggest problem. That's a category that emits the most greenhouse gas by far. It's the most problematic. And because that first target date is so soon, 2030, you know, we have less than 10 years, it's quite complicated. not only do we need rapid electrification, but we are going to need to reduce our driving by a large amount. And that's just the math. And as I mentioned, I have done that math because I have done a plan showing how cars, light duty vehicles could achieve that climate stabilizing target. And the big problem to keep in mind is, and the panelists didn't say this, I loved all those electrical engineering degrees. I have one myself. And you know, that was a great conversation, but they did not talk about the fact, we have to keep this in mind, that cars last 15 years on average. That's what you have to use. And so when I looked at the fleet of cars that were going to be on the road in 2030, there were an awful lot of internal combustion engine cars. Now, I, of course, specified how fast we're going to electrify the fleet. And so that brings us down to the number 4, which is a 30% per capita GHG emission reduction. That's actually not enough. But I love it anyway. It says at least, and so it's really in the ballpark. I don't know exactly where that number came from, but luckily it's not too far below what we need to do. I used 32%. Now, of course, it's systems engineers. What we do is we pretend we're God, you know, and we pick out what is most reasonable. And so I could run a case where it was exactly like that. It'd be less than that in 2030 because this is a 2035 number. But of course, that means we'd have to electrify our fleet even faster than what I had assumed. And so it's difficult. But, anyway,
Mike, I'm so sorry to cut you off there, but your time has expired, so we'll need to move on to the next person. We do have 5 remaining speakers. Next will be Eddie Spreco, followed by Abdur Rahim Hamid.
Hi, good afternoon, board. This is Eddie Spreco with AGC San Diego. We're very supportive of this regional plan process, many of the ambitious proposals that you've included in today's resolution. Extra investment in transit and bike and the pedestrian infrastructure, it's long overdue. And with the environmental and some of the remediation projects and road improvement projects, it provides jobs and quality of life for all of our AGC contractors and workers. And we're looking forward to working with you on it. We have some concerns with the PLA language that you've heard already. I wanted to give you kind of the union contractor side of it. One of my jobs at AGC is to manage the collective bargaining agreements and that process with construction craft workers here in San Diego County. So that we sit on the management side with the bargaining with the carpenters, cement masons, laborers, operating engineers, iron workers, and the Teamsters. And so these negotiations typically set the prevailing wage for all workers on Sandag projects, whether they're union or non-union. But for a PLA, when that's adopted unilaterally by an agency like Sandag, it undermines that collective bargaining process. And those processes are regulated by the National Labor Relations Act. So it disrupts those existing relationships between our contractors and the unions that they are signatory to. Our union contractors aren't typically signatory with every union, but under a PLA, it is a forced relationship with every union. So you can see how this causes some friction and doesn't give incentive for these long-term partnerships between labor and management. PLAs also cut off a lot of the non-union subcontracting community that our union general contractors partner with on Sandag projects. So you lose some of those efficiencies and of the familiarity. And a lot of the subcontract community here in San Diego is open shop. And with all this infrastructure coming, we really can't afford to cut off any qualified contractors. So we understand Sandag's desire to really set labor standards, and we support efforts to build a really diverse local workforce and training. We have our apprenticeship program here. We partner with the joint labor management programs, and so we're all in on that. But after conversations today, I would definitely say that if you remove the PLA language from this thing, I think you get a lot more support and bring stakeholders together from the open shop programs, from the management side. Let's make sure we have a conversation about these things Don't disrupt the collective bargaining process if you're in support of that. And make sure that management and labor are at the table, along with some of these other open shop programs. And appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Next is Abdur Rahim Hamid, who will be followed by Francisco Pena.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The Honorable Jack Hsu, distinguished members of the SANDAG. My name is Abdur Rahim Hamid. I'm the National President of the Black Contractors Association. And I appreciate this resolution. It is a framework of something that could be incredible. But let's talk about what the initial aspects of your mission is: equity and inclusion. So you can't start off a conversation with exclusion and then tout inclusion. My good friend Tom Lemon has done a great job of selling PLAs as an exclusive opportunities for joint management labor apprenticeships. We are the only African-American state and federal registered apprenticeship program in the country that is a legal mandate for any employer to work on a job. He must be registered state and indentured by a state registered program. So to leave out the National Black Contractors Association, an opportunity for us to grow, who we have a right to participate and a right to be represented and feed our families, is not equity. So in spite of the language and the trickery of what is basically being laid forth, not because people have their marching orders, what we're asking you to do is to pause and to get us at the table so we can really talk about what is fair and equitable, or at best amend the language to include all state and federal approved apprenticeship programs, unilateral and joint management apprenticeship, which means union only. We are privileged in this city because we have the only first Black mayor in the city of San Diego, Mrs. Honorable Mayor Vasquez. We're privileged in the city because Shirley Weber is the first Black Secretary of Labor. And we're privileged to have the National Black Contractors Association, which has been visited by some of the most signature civil rights leaders and activists. You know, it's like having a LGBTQ apprenticeship program, Mr. Gloria, that is going to be left out because it's not joint management. Too much exclusion is being practiced in the name of inclusion. We cannot use democracy in the name of hypocrisy. We have to be inclusive. So if we're going to do something that's going to be trend setting, let's do something that's right for everyone. You cannot justify 20% set aside of the population and exclude 90%. No, the 68% of people of color do not include Black people of color. Those numbers are very dismal. You can look at the Metro report, you can look at Liss's report from the local support initiative that showed that African Americans and women are highly excluded. I ask you today to pause, to take another look, and to amend this resolution to include unilateral apprenticeship committees. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hamid. Next is Francisco Pena, who will be followed by someone with the phone number ending in 4353.
Yes, good afternoon. Good afternoon, board members. My name is Francisco Pena. I'm here to talk about apprenticeship opportunities. As a carpenter myself, I see the need of apprenticeship opportunities in all the construction industry. More and more, we see young men and women coming out of high school and not going to college. Hey, let's face it, college is not for everybody. With apprenticeship programs, we can help the next generation of skilled and trained craftsmen that will be able to earn a good livable wage with good benefits and a retirement to look forward to once they get to that retirement age, and they get an education in the construction field. My son, for example, he just started in the construction trade as first period union carpenter apprentice. He's excited of what he's building, what he's learning, and a goal to eventually buy a house and be able to live that American dream of being a homeowner. And all that is possible through these apprenticeship programs with the good paying jobs. And, you know, passing this right here would play into a factor of my son's future and all the other apprentices within the county of San Diego. And just FYI, within the Carpenters Union, we have multiple outreach programs actively recruiting all race and ethnicities women. We have the Sisters in the Brotherhood. We have different groups that with different ethnicities, and our apprenticeship program is open to everybody that's willing to swing a hammer and be part of the society and better our communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is the phone number 4353. Please go ahead when you're ready, followed by Carol Kim, who will be our last commenter.
Yeah, hi, my name is Ricardo Flores. I'm the Executive Director of LISC San Diego, the Local Initiative Support Corporation. We came out with a report that basically detailed the amount of apprenticeships that were going to, union apprenticeships that were going to folks. And what we found was that Blacks, women, and Asian Pacific Islanders were incredibly underrepresented in receiving apprenticeships from the years 2007 to 2017. And so we would urge you as members of SANDAG with the leverage and the ability to encourage a continued apprenticeships from these groups so that we can measure these numbers that were provided to us by the state. Again, I cannot reinforce enough that the concerns of equity and inclusion are incredibly important, but we're seeing lack of opportunity for Blacks, Asian Pacific Islanders, and women in apprenticeship programs. And just like the last speaker was mentioning about the value of apprenticeships, we don't dispute that. Apprenticeships are incredibly important to the college degree of the working trades. We need to be able to provide them to more individuals in our community, especially individuals in poverty. And especially we need to focus on those groups that are not provided those apprenticeships, and then measure that, because we can measure that because, again, the state has that information. So we would strongly urge you to really use the power of this committee, of this board, to ensure that those apprenticeships are being provided to these communities that have been left out. Thank you.
Thank you. And our last commenter will be Carol Kim.
Thank you. Good afternoon, board members. My name is Carol Kim, and I'm the Director of Community Engagement for the San Diego Building and Construction Trades Council. Many thanks to Board Member Jack Hsu for bringing forward this resolution. We really appreciate the focus on equity and creating a strong and real commitment to greater equity in San Diego County, something that's been lacking for a long time. I also appreciate Second Vice Chair Alejandra Sotelo Solis and Vice Chair Mayor Todd Gloria, who made this motion, as they represent communities that are majority minority. They are leaders of cities that are reflective of the impacted communities of concern that would benefit from the statement of values embodied in this resolution. So of course, their decisions are thoughtful and representative of the needs of their constituents. I'll note that the vote mentioned by a previous speaker raised a ballot measure where voters allegedly, quote, overwhelmingly voted against PLAs, unquote. Some facts: only 37% of voters voted in that election. That happened about 10 years ago. And of those, only 58% of the voters of the city of San Diego voted for that ballot measure, not the 65% claimed by the previous speaker, which means only 21.7% of the voters voted against PLAs, which is hardly an overwhelming majority. That also means that nearly 80% of voters in San Diego, when given an opportunity to vote against PLAs, chose not to. Our building trades unions, despite only having about 15% of the construction market in San Diego County, have excelled in increasing the job quality standards and worker protections of the workers in San Diego, in spite of the active opposition of those who are decrying project labor agreements in the public comments so far. Also, our unions are majority minority, made up of diverse groups, and we are incredibly proud of the work we have done to uplift these workers and their families. We are actively doing outreach and recruiting from our most disenfranchised and marginalized communities, driving and delivering funding for apprenticeship programs, apprenticeship readiness programs, community life skill programs, and more, here in San Diego and across the country. We maintain a strong commitment to continuing to push and improve the inclusion of BIPOC workers in our unions and across the industry, and ensure that they are in careers that pay them for the value of their labor, that allows them to support their families with dignity and comfort, that will break intergenerational cycles of poverty and lift communities into the middle class. This is equity in action, and we thank you for supporting it in this resolution today.
Thank you, Chair. That concludes the public comments.
Okay, well, thank you very much for all the public comments. We are beginning to lose board members here because we are after 12. So let me call on the hands that are up and then we will move forward to a vote. So first we had Mayor Wells.
Thank you for recognizing me. There's a lot of talk about equity. Equity is not just for union members. Equity is for all people. There's been a consensus amongst a wide divergent group of people that says that this resolution is palatable, but not with PLAs. So I make a substitute motion that we pass this resolution, but take away the language that adopts PLAs.
I'll second that motion. This is Terry Gasterland from Del Mar.
Okay, so this is a substitute motion. So we can't have a substitute motion on a substitute motion. We have to vote on the first substitute motion first, but.
I'll withdraw my first motion, Chair Blakespear. So it will be just an original motion. Thank you.
Let's go to the attorney on the appropriate process here.
Once a motion has been seconded, it cannot be withdrawn. And the chair is correct that there can be only one substitute motion on the floor at a time. And because the substitute motion does deal with a paragraph within a resolution specifically, it is properly characterized as a substitute motion. So you need to dispose of the substitute motion before you can move forward with any other motions. Can
we go back to the friendly amendment?
Before we jump in on that, I'm going to call on the other people who have had their hands up. Mayor Bailey.
Thank you, Chair. I really appreciate the discussion. The procedures that Councilmember Shu followed to introduce this resolution were not typical nor deliberative. And I think it's an example of what happens when we don't follow a deliberative process. Because it was not deliberative or properly vetted, while the tone of this resolution may have intended to be inclusive, the actual language doesn't appear to be so. And there's obviously a lot of questions that have been asked. So not only does the resolution raise some legal questions around terms of employment and implementation, but it's also an obvious conflict with the equity statement we've recently adopted, as it excludes the vast majority of Black workers, Hispanic workers, white workers, men and women for participating. So a resolution that excludes the majority of our local workers from participating in public projects is not inclusive, it's not equitable, and it's not something that we should be championing, as it strengthens the very systems that have historically excluded disadvantaged communities. So given all of these concerns, the questions raised by Mayor Vasquez, the comments by Caltrans, which we haven't really addressed at all, and the very powerful comments by many of the public speakers, I think we should just forward this resolution to the executive board. Let's begin a more deliberative process and consider amending the PLA language as part of that process. As Mayor Voss asked the question, what's the rush? There's nothing time sensitive about this resolution. So if we're going to do it, let's do it right. Let's involve all of the stakeholders and let's actually follow our equity statement.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Rodriguez.
Thank you. I'll be short and sweet. I just want to echo a lot of the other board members in that we just adopted an equity statement, and items in this resolution completely contradict what we are trying to do as a body for our region. And if you have ever stated or supported in the past that Black Lives Matter, then I encourage you not to rush this resolution through, because as you've heard from many of the speakers, they are not being represented as the current resolution stands. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Shu.
I appreciate the comments from the public and from the other board members greatly. First of all, this is not going to be the end of the discussion on project labor agreements and how we have inclusive projects going forward. We have a lot of discussion to follow. One thing about project labor agreements that we should keep in mind: what was the world like before project labor agreements? We had people working who were not qualified. We had no apprenticeship programs. We had contractors bringing in people from outside our region, working on these projects and leaving, taking money away from our region freely. That was what it was like before. We had no order. Our interests of our regions were not being taken care of. Our workers were not being taken care of. That's why we need project labor agreements. Now, with that said, there's a number of things that we need to go forward on to deal with better. And in terms of the comment on not having project zero mentioned in this resolution, we're back to the situation in which, because a document doesn't include everything, that we want to pick on it and we want to delay it and push things further. We've delayed this RTP for 2 years. We shouldn't be delaying it anymore, and we're using delay tactics. So we need to decide on these issues in this general guidance resolution today. With that said, I'd like to ask if a substitute motion can be amended. Legal counsel, can you advise?
The maker of the substitute motion, with the concurrence of their seconder, could amend the substitute motion.
So I'd like to suggest the following changes to move this process further and that we can get through this before we lose all of our board members. My suggested change is the following language change on this resolution. In the whereas, which is at the bottom of the first page that addresses project labor agreements, we insert the following language. Joint management apprenticeships and other state-approved apprenticeship programs, and then comma. So we include other state apprenticeship programs, which of course would include the ones that were mentioned today from the Black Contractors Association and Open Shop and all those others. I think it's a pretty inclusive statement. So just insert the term other state-approved apprenticeship programs. Second addition is that in the therefore letter resolve number 8, that we include the language effective land use planning that eliminates sprawl development and regional habitat conservation. That was suggested by one of our public speakers. Eliminates sprawl development. If we could include that language. The other comments from Gustavo, which I take well with regards to Project Zero and other public comments, I think can be included in the plan as we go forward. Today, Project Zero is important to us. Tomorrow, there may be another project. Safety is something that I think we need to include in our regional transportation plans. I don't know if we can, I've looked for a space to include it. I think we just need to keep it in mind as we go forward with the planning process. So I'm not suggesting any language change on this resolution at this time. With these changes, I hope I have the support from many of the board members that have expressed concern with this resolution. Let's get moving and move this forward. We're going to have opportunities to work on the other interests that you have expressed and make this our regional transportation plan be the inclusive plan that we have been talking about. Thank you.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to make sure. Yes, I think right now, as we, with the language that was shared by many of our speakers today, I think the point that was made about the Black Contractors Association, I think is important that we have that voice at the table. Project Zero, I know that we have talked about it with the language that was brought up earlier today, and item actually in the chair's comments today, and I believe we are there in having that discussion and how we move towards the goal of zero fatalities. And I just missed that. I believe there was one more point, Mr. Shu, and I want to make sure I captured it. What was that last point? You said Project Zero, the Black contractors, and
well, let's just be clear on what he's recommending the addition. So the very first one was the addition of other state approved apprenticeships.
Okay.
And so are you yes or no on that one?
Other state approved apprenticeship programs. I think at this time, no, just the Black Contractors Association and the JLM.
Okay, I don't think that was his request, but do you want to
Just
go?
for clarification, other apprenticeship programs would include the Black. We just don't have to name every group. Other state apprenticeship programs would include the Black Contractor Association's apprenticeship programs and open shops.
So I think just to clear this up, and I know we are already over time there, Chair. I think I'm going to go with, I think that it's important that we move forward with the language as is. I think we, for me, it was, the Black Contractors Association, again, because we have, we need to be purposeful, as well as JLM. And I think that there's a movement to be all inclusive. So I guess if there's a language for JLM, I will make them friendly amendment to JLM and BCA, the Black Contractors Association, and just moving forward with those two groups. And then again, this is where the equity statement will come into play. We will be able to adjust, pivot if needed. So with that, I will make the amendment, the friendly amendment, to include those two groups. And that's basically it. Again, we can revisit this at another point in time, but those are the two groups.
And let's see if the seconder is amenable to that.
Yes.
Okay.
What a clarification. Is this amendment to approve all state approved programs?
No, I mean, what she just said, at least the way that I heard it, was the addition of only the words JLM and Black contractors, but not,
because those are the ones.
Yeah, but not state approved apprenticeships. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Can I request the mayor to consider approving all state approved programs? I don't see why we would be against that.
Yeah, and so I'm curious, Mr. Shu, thank you, Mr. Wells. Who else is included in those state approved programs?
So if we say other state apprenticeship programs, we're going to be inclusive for all the other groups. You may have apprenticeship programs for the Native Americans. You may have an apprenticeship program, other open shop programs that need to be included. And that's why I wanted the inclusive language rather than specifying a particular organization. And whenever you start specifying one particular organization, then you end up excluding the ones that you didn't mention. So I think the safe way to say it is to say state approved, other state approved apprenticeship programs.
Okay, so you're, again, to clarify, this is for all statewide state approved apprenticeship programs, which then includes everybody that spoke against the motion, and makes this more inclusive of all agencies, including the AGC, the other entities, is what you're asking for, Mr. Shu.
Correct. And we ran into this when we dealt with the equity statement. Once you start naming groups, you're going to end up excluding somebody, and tomorrow another organization is going to come in and say, how come my apprenticeship program is not included? So let's just use general language that I think will be inclusive, and state approved apprenticeship programs, I think, will help do that.
Okay. Go ahead.
No, I mean, I was going to say, so when you said okay, does that mean you're okay with adding that language instead? And I was going to ask the seconder or not.
I think at this point, I will stay with my original motion to include JLS as well as the Black Contractors Association. We can add the additional language at another point in time, but for right now, those two organizations because they were advocating extremely hard today. And I think it's really good to hear and reflect that. So.
Okay, Mayor, and then the seconder of the motion?
I'll continue to second it.
Okay. Okay, so now we have the motion, and so I'm going to proceed with the three hands that are up. So Mayor Jones.
I'm sorry, Mayor, you still need to deal with the second aspect of the amendment to the motion to see if the motion maker is good with those.
I mean, I think
With
she
land
didn't
use
talk
plan.
about those, so I think that all the environmental language, she didn't bring that up, so I think I was just going to leave that as it was.
As long as we have a record that she and the seconder accept it.
They did not accept it. We focused on the labor part and not on the environment part right here.
Thank you.
Does that seem accurate to the motion maker?
Yes, but I'm willing to accept it as well. Because I didn't bring it up, but I'm willing to accept it as well. The project zero?
No, it had to do with sprawl.
Just keep it as the original motion with that amendment of those two organizations. Yeah, your original thought there, Chair Blakespear, was correct.
Okay. Okay, Mayor Jones.
Okay, so I'm a little unclear because we're clearly grinding sausage here. We're no longer actually having a meeting, and we're just on the fly trying to figure this out, trying to figure out that. The motion right now that is on the table is by whom exactly? Is it by Mr. Shu or is it not by Mr. Shu? Because my understanding was that he was saying that he wanted it to be inclusive of all state and federal, I think actually state and federal, but maybe it's the same, state programs that are apprenticeship programs. So I'm unclear as to whether that's where we're at. I feel like I agree with Shane Harris. What we're doing right now is not inclusive. It is against our policy that we just literally made. And that actually is very upsetting to me. You know, we're talking about, and then also number 7, which is on the second page of this equity statement, I mean, on this resolution, is also conflicting with the item about PLAs overall. So could we please have staff restate exactly where we're at for all of the board, because it's very unclear as to exactly where we're at.
Does the attorney want to weigh in on the procedural part? So the original motion, the substitute motion, and what it says?
Right now, there's one motion on the floor. That motion is offered by Mayor Sotelo Solis and seconded by Mayor Gloria. It includes the language that was initially proposed in Councilmember Shu's resolution with the modification that the apprenticeship programs that would be included would include the Black Contractors Association and the, I'm gonna have to ask the clerk to note what the second specified organization was, but that is the only modification to the motion.
So doesn't number 7 then conflict with that statement in itself, Mr. I'm sorry. Sorry, I can't read my notes. My apologies. Sorry, Mr. Kirk.
I'm sorry, by saying does number 7 conflict with that? I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Yeah, does the local workforce and careers in construction for our region through project labor agreements conflict with the new statement of the change in the PLA, including the joint labor management apprenticeships, and then only those 2 organizations, which I too am unclear what the second organization was. So maybe the clerk or the chair could please let us know what that is.
First of all, I don't believe that it conflicts for again, the purpose of this is that we will consider, the board will consider these, or staff will consider these in what we bring back to you as the board. So I don't believe that there's an inherent conflict there, but that will help just to define what is brought back to you for an ultimate decision.
Okay, and could Mayor Sotelo Solis confirm what is the second organization?
It's the joint labor management.
Okay, so it's not the state apprenticeship programs, just those two, excluding all others, correct?
Those two. Thank you.
Only
My motion
excluding
is at
others.
this time.
Okay.
Thank you. No, actually, no, Mayor Jones. Thank you.
Okay.
It does. Thanks.
Let's go to the rest of the public comments. So Councilmember Minto has had his hand up.
Okay, I'm a little confused now too, because I thought this was a substitute motion. Because when Mayor Bailey wanted to make a substitute motion that we table this and send it back to the executive committee to do the wordsmithing that we're doing right now, I thought, Mr. Kirk, you said this was a substitute motion. We couldn't make any substitute motions on it.
That's accurate. This is a substitute motion. There had been an initial motion. So as this is a second motion made, this is properly a substitute motion, and only one substitute motion can be on the floor at a time. The only exception to that is for subsidiary motions on procedural issues.
Okay, because when Mayor Jones asked who made the original motion, we didn't get an answer on that, I guess. Maybe that's why I was thinking this was the original motion.
I'm sorry, I understood her question to be who made the motion that's on the floor right now.
Okay.
Mayor Sotelo Solis, seconded by Mayor Gloria.
Okay, I get that then. In that case, if this is a proper motion, I would, since the motion now belongs to the body, I would move to vacate the substitute motion.
That does belong to the body, and the board can vote. Again, we've discussed how it cannot be withdrawn by the maker of it, but the board or the body can vote with a majority vote to vacate that, because you are correct. The motion does belong to the body.
Bailey
I
seconds.
second that.
So does a motion to vacate need to be voted on immediately?
It does take precedence.
Okay.
It's debatable, but it takes precedence.
Okay, so let's vote on the motion to vacate, and then we're going to vote on, and then we'll see where we are. So let's vote on the motion to vacate.
Thank you, Chair. For the City of Carlsbad, Mayor Hall.
Yes.
For the City of Chula Vista, Mayor Salas.
No.
Apologies, I'm going to pause for just a moment for the production team to get the voting slide up. Thank you for your patience. For the City of Coronado, Mayor Bailey.
Bailey, no.
For
My
the
apologies,
County
my
of-
apologies. Bailey, yes. This is the vacate motion, yes. Bailey, yes.
Thank you. I'll just read for the record what I have so far. For the City of Carlsbad, Mayor Hall was a yes vote. For the City of Chula Vista, Mayor Salas is a no. And for the City of Coronado, Mayor Bailey is a yes. For the County of San Diego, Supervisor Lawson Reamer.
Nope.
For the for the City of Del Mar, Mayor Gasterland.
Yes.
For the City of El Cajon, Mayor Wells.
Yes.
For the City of Encinitas, Chair Blakespear.
No.
For the City of Escondido, Councilmember Martinez.
No.
For the City of Imperial Beach, Councilmember Aguirre.
Aguirre, no.
For the City of La Mesa, Councilmember Shu.
No.
For the City of, the City of Lemon Grove is absent. For the City of National City, Second Vice Chair Sotelo Solis.
No.
For the City of Oceanside, Councilmember Rodriguez.
Yes.
For the City of Poway, Mayor Voss.
Yes.
For the City of San Diego, Vice Chair Gloria.
No.
For the City of San Marcos, Mayor Jones.
Yes.
For the City of Santee, Mayor Minto.
Minto, yes.
For the city of Solana Beach, Mayor Hebner.
Ebner, no.
For the city of Vista, Mayor Ritter.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And that motion does not pass.
Okay, we're going to go to the vote on the motion that's on the floor.
Thank you. For the city of Carlsbad, Mayor Hall. Oh, I'm sorry, just a moment. All right, thank you for your patience again. For the city of Carlsbad, Mayor Hall.
To be honest, at this point, I'm really not sure what I'm voting on, but I'm going to vote no.
Thank you. For the city of Chula Vista, Mayor Salas.
Yes.
For the city of Coronado, Mayor Bailey.
Bailey, no.
For the county of San Diego, Supervisor Lawson Reamer.
Sorry, I couldn't unmute. Yes.
For the city of Del Mar, Mayor Gasterland.
Since it's unclear whether or not we have sufficiently satisfied concerns, Del Mar votes no.
Thank you. For the city of El Cajon, Mayor Wells.
No.
Thank you. For the city of Encinitas, Chair Blakespear.
Yes.
For the city of Escondido, Councilmember Martinez.
Yes.
For the city of Imperial Beach, Councilmember Aguirre.
Aguirre, yes.
For the city of La Mesa, Councilmember Shu.
Yes.
For the city of Lemon Grove, I apologize, the city of Lemon Grove is absent. For the city of National City, Second Vice Chair Sotelo Solis.
Sotelo Solis, aye.
Thank you. For the city of Oceanside, Councilmember Rodriguez.
No.
For the city of Poway, Mayor Voss.
No.
For the city of San Diego, Vice Chair Gloria.
Aye.
I'm sorry, Vice Chair, I didn't hear your vote.
Aye.
Thank you very much. For the city of San Marcos, Mayor Jones.
No.
For the city of Santee, Mayor Minto.
Minto, no.
For the city of Solana Beach, Mayor Hebner.
Ebner, yes.
And for the city of Vista, Mayor Ritter.
No.
Thank you very much. And that motion does not pass.
Chair, I'd like to call for a weighted vote.
About a substitute motion.
I just asked for a weighted vote.
Okay, so there's a weighted vote.
Can I second that?
Yeah, I think, does the weighted vote requesting a second?
Request a second member to request it. It's not technically a second, so it is now in order.
Okay, who was the second member?
It's Tara.
Okay.
Thank you. For the city of Carlsbad, Mayor Hall. Mayor Hall, are you with us still? I'll come back for the city of Carlsbad. For the city of Chula Vista, Mayor Salas.
Yes.
Thank you. For the city of Coronado, Mayor Bailey.
Yeah.
Mayor Bailey, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear your vote. All right, I will come back to the city of Coronado. For the county of San Diego, Supervisor Lawson Reamer.
Yes.
For CB County of San Diego, Supervisor Anderson. For the city of Del Mar, Mayor Gasterland.
No.
For the city of El Cajon, Mayor Wells. For the City of Encinitas, Chair Blakespear.
Yes.
For the City of Escondido, Councilmember Martinez.
Yes.
For the City of Imperial Beach, Councilmember Aguirre.
Aguirre, yes.
For the City of La Mesa, Councilmember Shu.
Yes.
For the City of Lemon Grove, the City of Lemon Grove is absent. For the City of National City, Second Vice Chair Sotelo Solis.
Sotelo Solis present and accounted for, yes.
Thank you. For the City of Oceanside, Councilmember Rodriguez. For the City of Poway, Mayor Voss. For the City of San Diego, Vice Chair Gloria.
Aye.
Thank you. For the City of San Diego, Council President Campbell.
Yes.
Thank you. For the City of San Marcos, Mayor Jones. For the City of Santee, Mayor Minto. For the City of Solana Beach, Mayor Huebner.
Yes.
For the City of Vista, Mayor Ritter.
Can I ask the
Sean?
clerk to clarify the number of jurisdictions who voted?
Yes, thank you. Just a moment. 8 jurisdictions are present for voting. Or I
And that does
apologize,
not-
9.
Okay, 8 or 9?
9.
Okay, that does constitute a quorum.
There's a bit of confusion, I think, because some folks are on the line but not responding to the votes. Can you clarify how I should?
Those
I
who
go
have
back through
voted
the
are
list?
the ones you have a record of being present. So you need
Okay.
9 jurisdictions present in order to have a quorum.
Thank you. Then we have 9 votes.
Okay.
I think we have 10 votes. I mean, when you count up the green and the red, I think it's 10. It was on there for just a second, but.
Some jurisdictions have multiple votes.
Oh, okay. So
Yes,
that counts.
we have
as
11
one.
total votes, but 2 were from the same jurisdiction.
I see. Okay. Okay. Well, with that, we are adjourned. Our next meeting is April 23rd.
Chair, can I make a question, please?
Sure. Okay.
So my understanding of a PLA is that they're done kind of by the project, and that each project could then be customized per who is included in that. And this is just an umbrella resolution. So is this going to preclude the state-approved apprenticeship programs from being included in other PLAs that we may choose to put out for our projects in the future?
Just to clarify the record, if I may, Mayor, it's very important that this does not preclude anything. As stated in the resolution, these are just issues for the board to consider in the regional plan. That's critical in terms of the legal defensibility of this. Ultimately, you will make a final decision on what is included in the regional plan once that has been presented to you. You've had your environmental document. These are just issues to be considered in its development.
There's nothing binding in this, and anything can be considered on a project by project basis as it comes up.
That is correct.
Well,
Based on this resolution.
And I would like to also add, hi, Mayor Huebner, that in terms of the PLA, however we negotiate the PLA will determine whether it's an entity-wide project by project. Normally, it's entity-wide, just like our AB 805, that it's specified for projects that are over, construction projects that are over $1 million. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it wouldn't be by project, but that is something that may be discussed.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So our next meeting is April 23rd at 9 a.m. We will see you then, and we are adjourned.